Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this Thursday transmission. What we had all hoped wouldn't happen, but predicted would, is beginning. The civil war is beginning to engulf areas of eastern Ukraine as Ukrainian putsch coup military, overthrown, of course, by Western governments. The original government was. I'm talking like Yoda now. We saw the elected government overthrown, a new government installed, and they are saying that any of the towns that have basically voted with their feet or voted in referendums to join Mother Russia they were previously part of will be invaded. And so tanks from Kiev and troops have entered Slavansk, and there is street battles going on and burning buildings. So there you go. And the Russian foreign minister yesterday said, we're going to play that clip again coming up, that if any Russian citizens are attacked, Russia will respond militarily, quote, just like they did in Pristina, South Ossetia, Abkhazia. Now, of course, he was talking about Georgia, South Ossetia, and Abkhazia. I threw in Pristina, even though that was a mistake to throw in Pristina from Kosovo. That is a case where the Russians actually landed at the airport when they were engaging in ethnic cleansing of the Russian/Slavic population in the area and did repel NATO. So that's a repeat that the Russians will do what they say they're going to do. So I made a mistake there throwing in the wrong town in the wrong country. But the reason my brain factoided to that was because I was going back in my memory to another time the Russians did that. So this is really getting out of control, obviously, and we'll break it down today. Paul Watson's going to be joining us. We got two stories up on Infowars.com where the New York Times, first we wrote about this last night, and the New York Times today retracted, but in the back of their paper. And New York Times publishes fabricated evidence of Russian troops in eastern Ukraine. That's a video report by Paul Watson. Kurt Nimmo did a text report. We should probably add Watson's video into this. New York Times issues back page retraction on Russian troops in Ukraine photos. Turns out they photoshopped them. So that's the type of stuff going on to start a war. Kind of like William Randolph Hearst told Remington, the famous painter, you supply me the paintings of the Rough Riders on San Juan Hill in an imaginary war, being heroes charging up the hill, and I will supply you with the war. You make the pictures, I'll make the war. What was the exact quote? What was William Randolph Hearst's quote on to Remington? When you guys look that up, William Randolph Hearst quote on Spanish-American War. I believe it was, you supply the pictures, I'll supply the war. The point is, I'm digressing. There is a New York Times article out, speaking of spinning things and trying to misrepresent things to create more racial division and balkanization. The headline is, a defiant rancher savors the audience that rallied to his side. And as soon as I read this morning, where he said basically blacks would be better off being slaves again than being, slaves for the government, I knew when I called the Bundys this morning, and I talked to him, he's coming on in the next segment, what they were going to say. I said, what do you mean by that? Well, slavery's terrible, but it's just another form of slavery today. And I told the crew, I said, watch, when I call them, they're going to say this. How do I know what they'd say? Because Reverend Childress basically says the same thing. The other guest, C.L. Bryant, former head of the NAACP up in Garland in Dallas, says the same thing. They say they replace one evil with another, and that family life was stronger under oppression statistically than it is under this new soft kill. So that's what Bundy said. And granted, Bundy is kind of a fossil, vestigial, old-time Americana who just says what he thinks. So we'll get it from the horse's mouth straight ahead, but they're going to go crazy with this. And now if you're for land rights or property rights or against the feds tasering you, you're a racist. I mean, we knew this was coming, and here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Western-backed Ukrainian troops have smashed into Russian-controlled cities With tanks, armored vehicles, and troops, an open war and civil war is beginning. We're going to be breaking that down. We are also going to be breaking down the latest economic numbers that are coming out that are extremely serious, and an incredibly important article from CNN. Veterans languish and die on VA hospitals' secret list, a death panel. So CNN, occasionally, even a blind hog, can find acorns, broken clocks are right twice a day. This is a very important article that Staff Sergeant Biggs, that's a reporter for us, brought to my attention this morning. We're going to be talking to him later on the broadcast as well about that. First off, though, the Bundy situation in southern Nevada is a lot bigger than Cliven Bundy. It's a lot bigger than Alex Jones. It's a lot bigger than libertarian ideas or Christian ideas or ideas of freedom. It's about the feds coming out there and pointing guns at people, having snipers, tasering people, using attack dogs on folks, and saying there's no free speech in the county, but in two tiny boxes in the middle of the desert, little pig pens. America saw that Tiananmen Square-type brutality, and thousands of Americans showed up over the week, over 1,000 in one day, 2 Saturdays ago. Our reporters were there live covering it. That video's gone viral. It's titled, Feds Surrender to American Citizens in Nevada. The story broke locally, was put out on the internet at Infowars.com, was made an international story by Matt Drudge at DrudgeReport.com. And that's on record. MSNBC has attacked that. The New York Times has attacked that. They've all attacked it and pointed that out. Now, remember what they did with Rand Paul. When he was running for Senate and about to win, the Republicans had tried to beat him. He won the nomination. The Democrats then, dressed up like hayseeds, went out and said racist things, saying they supported Rand Paul. We did the Google search on the images. You can do that now with faces. It had just come out at the time, 4 years ago, and documented, then I'm going to Cliven Bundy, that indeed it was Democratic operative. We broke that again. The New York Times got caught today photoshopping Russian soldiers in to say that Russians were fighting the Ukrainian troops. They've had to retract that today. Infowars.com broke that. So my point is they are deceivers. Now, Cliven Bundy, when I read his quotes in the New York Times, I'm going to read the quote because there's no video or audio, and a lot of times they twist things or take them out of context. I knew what he was going to say when I called him. I called him this morning, and I said, what do you mean by your statement talking about black folks, that they abort their young children, and they, quote, put their young men in jail because they never learn how to pick cotton? And I've often wondered, are they better off as slaves picking cotton and having a family life and doing things, or are they better off under government subsidy? They didn't get no more freedom. They got less freedom. Now, that's kind of a cruder way of saying what our black guests have said. C.L. Bryant, former head of the NAACP in Garland, one of the biggest suburbs of Dallas. That's basically what Reverend Childress has said. Quote, they replaced one evil you could see, and that which does not kill you only makes you stronger. I mean, I'm going back and read the history books. Black folks were incredibly strong, intellectual, and had strong families after slavery. And then they had incredibly powerful communities up until they got rid of segregation, which I'm not endorsing. They owned all their own businesses. They were becoming successful. People got jealous. LBJ, public letters, said they're taking over. They're getting uppity. We got to get them on welfare, break up their families. Now, here he is saying they abort their children. I asked Clive, I said, so you don't want to abort the black babies? He said, no. Isn't that racist? He doesn't want to kill 52% of blacks before they're born. He's an old country guy out there with a cowboy hat and uses the old-fashioned technical term, Anglo, Negro. I've ordered a Negro Modelo before, and people think it's racist. Spanish, that just means black. You use the word homosexual in England, they arrest you. They say it's a hate word. It's a scientific word. The point is they've made all these words racist. I don't believe Cliven Bundy's a bigot, but we've got him here to respond right now. Cliven, I just read your so-called quote. You told me earlier on the phone that's not exactly right. Cliven, you're a man of your word and honorable. I believe you're a good man. Tell me what you really said in this press conference that they've now supposedly dredged up but won't show the video or audio of. Cliven Bundy, exclusive, responding to this. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm quite excited about the respond, really. First, I want to tell the black community that I've gained more respect and more love for you the last few weeks than I've ever had. And I am concerned about the individual person, each one of you. And now this is a statement, and put it this way. I'm wondering if you're better off. Your young women are having abortions, and your young men are being thrown in jail, and your older women are sitting out on the sidewalk with your children and grandchildren, and they don't seem to be happy. And what I'm wondering is, are you better off in this type of slavery than you were when you was home with your family unit, with your gardens, with your chickens, with your men working, and your family life? Are you better off now, or were you better off then? I'm wondering these things.
Well, the reason I knew when I first called you and didn't put words in your mouth, I said, what does this statement mean? You said, well, first off, it's a little out of context. But you said they've traded a new form of slavery for an old form of slavery. And the reason I knew what you'd say is that's a libertarian conservative refrain that I've heard from every libertarian and conservative black leader I've had on this show. So I knew what you were saying immediately. But then I called up and got you to tell me what you thought, and sure enough, it's exactly what I thought. What do you think of the New York Times trying to take this out of context and spin it?
Well, I haven't really read that, and I don't know for sure. But, yeah, if they think I'm racist, they're totally wrong. And if I think, I'm wondering, are they better off under the old system of slavery, or are they better off under the welfare slavery that they're under now? I'm not saying one way or the other, but I am wondering. It seems to me like maybe they were happier, and maybe they did have better families, and their family structure was better. And so, that's the question in my mind. And
undoubtedly,
there is a question.
Well, undoubtedly, I'm not endorsing slavery or segregation. They were two Byzantine feudal systems. Sharecroppers were in similar systems. But undoubtedly, the statistics of black communities, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 90% legitimacy, fathers at home. In fact, I've seen even Harvard's own numbers and Princeton's own numbers. We've done reports on this. Lower crime rates than the white community in the 30s and 40s. Because it was all about, they're not going to keep us down. We're going to build our own communities. We're going to wear suits and ties. We're going to go to college. We're going to build our own colleges. And the suppression actually made them stronger because they knew they were suppressed. I mean, this is basic warfare information. But it's what I say every day. But when you don't know you're being suppressed, then you absolutely disintegrate. And I remember you saying over and over again, unprompted, we can pull up the clips, that everyone around the world you believe has a good soul and wants freedom. You said in every country in the world. So how is that you're saying everybody worldwide wants freedom, but you don't like black people?
And I know black people want freedom, and I know that their souls are good. Individually, I know that. And that's what our Constitution was all about, is to be able to, these people to be able to exercise their agency, be able to feel free, be able to speak, be able to go and do the things, to be able to experiment, and for sure be able to have good families. That's what our founding fathers want, and I know that's what our Heavenly Father wants for them. For them and for us, there's no difference between them and us. We're all the same. And our Heavenly Father loves us the same. He gives us the same opportunity, and we are the same. And so there's no prejudice in my mind at all.
Well, what the controlled media does is they take stuff out of context to demonize folks. But here's your first official statement responding to the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN. Without me interrupting, make your statement of what you really stand for and why you brought this up. Were you bringing it up as a rhetorical to cause a debate?
You know, why this subject was brought up is we had a party, a gathering here last Friday, and I invited the ethical groups, but there's very few of them come. Most of the people that come were a lot of them were from the eastern coast. A lot of them, they were basically white people. So when I got through, I questioned, why aren't you people here? And so I expressed sort of some of my feelings here about how I felt about them. And they put them, they made it sound like I was prejudiced. I wasn't prejudiced. I was actually inviting them to the party. And we're actually going to have another party this Friday, along the Virgin come and enjoy this public land and see what America's all about. It's a land of beautiful and plenty, and that's to celebrate. That's celebrate our liberties and freedom. And not only that, let's let the world know that we're not going to let nobody point guns at us again, ever again. Not the United States government, for sure.
Cliven, if there was a black farmer or a rancher, say, in Kansas, having the same thing happen to him, now that people came to your aid, would you or your family come to black farmers' aid?
Let me explain something maybe even closer. Right now, there's a black man right in my front yard right now in the militia, and he has been protecting my family. He's been coming through my home, eating with me and eating with my family, mingling back and forth through my house, day and night, and I can't see anything different about him than any of the other boys that's coming in and out of here. We love him and respect him the same as we do anyone else. I think he feels as comfortable as anybody else. That's really the way we're supposed to feel about each other. And it's an example going right on in my home right now.
Well, now we get the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. That's what I always point out. The media demonizes the Tea Party and says no minorities are there, even though I go to major libertarian Tea Party events and there's all sorts of people there, black, white, Hispanic, you name it. But then I talk to black friends of mine, they're like, I don't know if I want to go to a Tea Party. Aren't they racist? That's done to keep us apart. So I didn't know that you were complaining that you'd invited black groups there and other, quote, minority groups, and they weren't there, and you were complaining, saying, man, they're on another form of modern slavery, replacing one evil with another, and I had no idea. Wow. And do you think the New York Times knows they're lying on purpose or spinning this?
I don't know. I'm in front of the media for a lot of hours every day, and I sure have never indicated that I was prejudiced. Like I said, I did actually miss the ethnic groups, and I've asked, where are you? And in other words, why would I ask if I wasn't concerned? I want them to be able to enjoy this feeling of freedom and liberty and give them the opportunity to stay.
You know what? We ought to offer to fly out C.L. Bryant with Jakari Jackson and Josh Owens if they want to go out there this weekend to that party. So, maybe we should send C.L. Bryant out there, and you can get a chance to meet him and talk to him, because he makes a lot of the same points, that we've replaced one form of slavery with another, and that was basically the plan. But all of us are going into this Cloward and Piven bankrupted sharecropper economy. That's what this is all about, is they want to make us dependent. They want to get us off the land. They want to run everybody off the land. You're the last people standing. Finally, have you been served with any papers? What's coming next?
Well, I've told you that probably for almost a week now, I've had some certified letters. I have never opened them. I just put them back. We got a lot more important things to worry about, those legal papers. But whether I'm served there, I don't know. Nobody's actually been to my porch and served me with anything yet.
Now, first you guys reported they killed 2 of your prize bulls. The BLM denied that. A week later, they admitted, no, we killed them. Said they were dangerous. Big pools of blood, shot them. And then we now learn that you found a mass grave of more dead cows that they shot. And the BLM admitted that 2 days ago. They didn't have a court order to kill your cows or destroy your water cisterns or pipes. How large was the damage by the federal rustlers?
Well, we're still assessing that. We're so busy trying to take care of just ranch duties here. We haven't really been able to get out and assess and even find all the mass graves. What we have done is try to just make secure for us, giving them water and feed enough to get by. And so we're still in sort of a getting by type mode here, not really the mode yet. So there's damage, and I have animals that basically are wounded. They're sick and they're trying to heal, and I've got a lot of that type of thing. Another thing people don't understand is this desert range here is rocky. It's all gravel and rock. And when you chase these cattle across these lands for miles in helicopters and horses, it wears their hooves off, and these cattle are all sore-footed, so they can't go back to their natural habitat and live, because now their shoes are wore out, and they can't walk on on the rocks and the cactus and all the thing like they could in a normal life cycle. So if they're basically sore-footed. Just the same thing, the reason why people put horseshoes on their horses is so their feet don't get sore. Well, the cow is like a fingernail. Their cow's fingernail grows, and it protects their hoof where they can move around and forage and make a living. When their fingernail is wore off the quick, they can't work no more. They can't travel, and this type of problem's going on.
All right. Well, sir, we really appreciate you coming on and giving us the first breaking report on where you really stand. And I'm going to read you the quote one more time and tell me what you think of it, to tell me if it's accurate so we can get that to the White House media operations so they can correct themselves, MSNBC, CNN, Media Matters, and the New York Times. And it goes on. Here's your quote. And in front of that government house, that door was usually open, and older people and the kids, and there's always at least half a dozen people sitting on a porch. They didn't have nothing to do. Speaking of projects you saw in Las Vegas, they abort their young children, which I know they're upset you're trying to stop them from killing their kids. It's because you're racist. You want blacks not to be dead because you're racist. They abort their young children. They put their young men in jail. Yeah, you don't like all the blacks being in jail, more racism, because they never learned how to pick cotton. And I've often wondered, are they better off as slaves picking cotton and having a family life and doing things, or are they better off under government subsidy? They didn't get no more freedom. They got less freedom. And then I said, do you mean, what do you mean by that? You said, well, they got a new form of slavery for old, which is just a classic statement that I've heard 1,000 times, literally. Are those quotes accurate? Because you told me that's not exactly what you said. No,
that's not exactly what I said. But if you add, I'm wondering if this is what the situation is, they're better off, and they would probably be fairly correct. But no, I didn't say it in that way. I did say they're aborting, the young women are aborting their babies, and the young men are in jail, and the older women and children are sitting in front of their houses in the sidewalk, and I'm talking about government subsidy houses. And the other picture is when they was back in the South, they were in the front of their porch as a family unit, and they had chickens and gardens to take care of, and their men were out working. I didn't have to say nothing about picking cotton, but they were out working, and it seemed to me like their family and unit and their happiness was greater there than it is here in the city in a government subsidy home.
Wow, sir, I got to stop you. This is bombshell. This is bombshell. The New York Times just got caught with photoshopped Russian soldiers attacking people, and they had to admit it was photoshopped and fake. They had to retract today. You're telling me you did not say picking cotton?
No, I did not say picking cotton.
Unbelievable, because that is just amazing. Wow. Anything else from those quotes that's inaccurate?
Well, the main thing is the family unit thing. You know what I'm talking about? They were happy as a family then, and their family out in these government subsidies, or this government welfare, or this government slavery, however you want to put it. Those people don't seem to be happy.
Well, they're not as strong as they were, and nobody is. We're being literally domesticated. Well, Cliven, Bundy, would you like the New York Times to retract then and take your actual statements that we have audio of live and correct their story?
I would appreciate that. I think they should do that, and especially if they make it a racist type thing, because I'm not racist. I've explained that to you, and like I said, right, I'll repeat that. I could probably go right out of this room right now and find that black man and have him give me a statement here within a few minutes. But anyway, he's been in and out of my home. There's no difference to him than anybody else, and I think he feels welcome as anybody else.
Well, absolutely. I know you've got another interview to do, but if you'd like us to call back in an hour or so and get his name and information.
Why don't you do that, and I'll have him see if I can find him here, and he could make a statement to you. That would be good.
Absolutely. I'll call your wife back, Mrs. Bundy, and we will get him on anytime he wants to in the next 2 hours, sir.
Okay. Hey, thank you.
God bless you, Mr. Bundy.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thank you. I knew what I was going to get when I called him. I said, what does this mean? He goes, I didn't really say all that. That's wrong. I meant it's one evil for another, government slavery. Because that's all conservatives ever talk about. I mean, it's just, I've heard it literally 1,000 times from black conservatives on this show. But again, that's how they do it. And they go find, you know, a rural hayseed who might have been from 100 years ago, will just straight shoot you. I mean, all he talks about is everybody's got good souls on the whole earth, and it's all love. And I can just hear him, and where are the minorities here? We need them here. But, you know, they're in government slavery. That turns into racism. I'm telling you. It's unbelievable how they spin everything, ladies and gentlemen. They know what they're doing. And then when you're truthful, they take it and spin it. We're going to be back with what could turn into regional war, you name it. But how dare Cliven Bundy? He should want to kill every black baby out there. Then he'd be liberal. How dare he? He reports for us from London. I hired Watson when he was 19 years old. I was at 18 years old, and now he's 30. And married, and I guess there'll be first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes babies in the baby carriage. But he joins us from London to talk about some really serious issues in a moment. But I'm going to ask Watson right now, as soon as you're done with us, Watson, we're going to grab that Cliven Bundy interview we just did, edit it down for time to just, you know, his main statements, maybe about 10 minutes, as I had him on about 20, and get it up to Infowars.com. Because if you go to drudgereport.com, you can see U.S. President bows the Japanese robot. Well, at least it's bowing to the Japanese, but that's customary. He's not bowing to every Saudi prince he finds or the Queen of England. But New York Times, Bundy and the Negro, slavery better than welfare. And Bundy has now denied that. There's no audio or video of him saying it. He says he did not say picking cotton and that it was taken out of context. He was making the point that it's a new form of slavery. So Bundy, says the New York Times, basically discredited him to create racism. So the article is a defiant rancher savors the audience that rallied to his side in an attempt to demonize the land rights movement, the liberty movement, the states' rights movement, the property rights movement. They're going to now, guaranteed tonight, MSNBC, CNN, they've already begun in the New York Times and Huffington Post, say, oh, look, the guy Alex Jones likes and Rand Paul likes and the senator from Nevada likes, other than Harry Reid. Why, they're all the Klan. I mean, that's all they got. Why, you don't like Obamacare, you're racist. Don't turn your guns on, you're racist. So we need to get his video out. You heard the audio, folks, your radio listeners, now. We need to go pull that off the servers. We're recording it live just minutes ago. And we need to get that to Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Now, you don't need my big, long intro and everything. Just me saying, Cliven Bundy, thanks for joining us. And then his statements basically cutting out my babble. Maybe leave at the end where I explain. I knew what was going to happen when I called him because I've heard this cliche literally over 1,000 times. From blacks, whites, everybody. That this is a new form of slavery. That's what it is. That's what the welfare state is, folks, is domestication, control. That's all we talk about here. It's called Agenda 21. It's pointed at everybody. Blacks were seen as the most isolated group that it was kosher to attack, so it was all beta tested on them first, as Tony Brown has said many times on this show. We want to get him back on that. What you see done in the black community will be done in your community next. So I want to get that video report out right now. Cliven Bundy responds to New York Times claims that he's racist, or Cliven Bundy responds to racism claims. Because it's important. It's a lot bigger than Cliven Bundy, and it's a lot bigger than what's happening out there. It's about them painting everything as racist. Everything. Rand Paul's a racist. Alex Jones is deeply racist. And they didn't even show a clip of me on MSNBC when they said I'm deeply racist. Well, he influenced the Boston bombers, and, well, this is the type of deeply racist thing that we deal with. At least with Bundy, they've got some old-timer statement they can try to twist, and that's what they do. Just like they got caught photoshopping Russian troops in. And the guy that took the photos, the freelance journalist, got mad and went public. We wrote an article about it. Kurt Nimmer wrote an article about it. Watson did a video about it. In fact, I want to get Watson's video just added to Kurt's article. That is very, very important. We're going to go to Paul Watson about the huge Ukraine situation in just a moment, but it's the same deception tactics. You know, they said Matt Drudge, the New York Times did. Now there's a bunch of articles. It was a flood of articles a few weeks ago. They said Matt Drudge has been caught lying. Yeah, he said that, you know, he's going to pay the $5,000 fine this year for not getting Obamacare. Well, if you own your own small business, you as the employer, and anyone that works for you, it's $5,000 per person. That's in the law. That's happening. And they just said, no, it's not. The fine starts in 2015. For everyone, it does. For small businesses, it starts this year. I know. I have accountants. I'm getting ready to pay the fine because most of my crew doesn't want me to get them insurance. They already have their own, or they'd rather have a big paycheck and make their own decision. I've come in and said, should we have company-wide insurance? But you're going to have to pay for part of it. You know, it's not free. And they're like, no, I already have this, I already have that, or I don't want it. Well, it doesn't exist, folks. There is no $5,000 fine. The New York Times said so. There are no 2 billion plus bullets. There are no armored vehicles. There are no black uniforms. The TSA is not groping you. The State Department didn't spend $5 billion to overthrow Ukraine, even though they have the State Department. The deputy head admits they spent $5 billion. We have the video of that. You understand what I'm talking about here? The New York Times caught, again, ball-faced photoshopping, just like aluminum tubes for Iraq and yellow cake from Niger. Now, before I go back to Watson and get his breakdown on this huge Russia situation, we are funded by viewers and listeners like you. Again, the radio show is simulcast at prisonplanet.tv and a full-on TV set, you know, document cam, guest cam, you name it. If you're a prisonplanet.tv member. Become a member today. 15 cents a day, $5.95 a month. Get a yearly membership and get 3 months free. We need your support. Each membership, 11 people can use your username. 11 people can simultaneously. Folks, if you gave it to 50 people, I doubt they'd all tune in at once at 7 o'clock to watch the nightly news and be blocked. Sometimes folks do say, no, some people are using my passcode now, my username passcode, that I can't get on, so I bought another membership for myself. Great. For $5.95, if you can get 11 people to watch the nightly news, you're doing something good. All my films, books, special live reports, The Daily Show, commercial-free audio, video, podcast, and you're supporting the very tip of the spear in the info war. Separately, we developed in the last 8-9 months InfoWarsLife.com, really the last year, but we launched it about 6-7 months ago. And they are incredible proprietary products. In fact, I take them on air every day. I'm going to take my Super Male, my Fluoride Shield, and my Survival Shield right now on air. Survival Shield is a proprietary form of nascent iodine that has absolutely done wonders in my life. You've heard the rave reviews, and best of all, it funds this viciously pro-liberty, no apologies, hardcore transmission. So get the Survival Shield. Just try the challenge. See what it does for you. You may feel bad the first few two weeks or so. Consult your physician because it's a major detoxer. Oh, my gosh. Gotta have it. I take a little bit more than you're supposed to. The Fluoride Shield has the nascent iodine and 5 other compounds to detoxify, so I take it with the Survival Shield. And then there is the Super Male Vitality that is really an energy booster / aphrodisiac. Just, you don't believe me? Just try it out for yourself. By the way, we've had 15% off running for a few months. Folks really like it. We're just getting rid of the special, and it's always going to be the lower price now. How do you like that? And then we'll have sales sometime. It'll be even less. I just want you to try it. I want to build the market, let you see how real it is so we can fund our operation. I don't have to sit here and plug stuff so much. Help fund us, get great products, great water filters, great books, films, pro-gun T-shirts. We have women's apparel made in the USA, Molon Labe for women, the best-looking women's gun T-shirt I've ever seen, just gold foil, Molon Labe with the Greek war helmet and the crossed M4s. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. We also have the lung cleanse that's done wonders. Just go read about it and watch the informational videos at InfoWarsLife.com. You spray 3 shots in your mouth and then inhale. Since I've been taking it, my allergies have gone down to almost 0. And Austin's the capital of allergies. So, again, great products at great prices that fund an absolutely essential transmission, free will, free association. Buy these products if you believe in what we're doing. and just see it as funding the operation. And then I know you'll come back, because this is no brag, just fact. By the grace of God, we ran into the top experts and were able to develop these products to bring you the very best. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. That's how we fund our entire transmission. Now, we have some extremely grave news, ladies and gentlemen, because as each new chapter or each new page of the Ukraine global crisis unfolds, it follows what we predicted it would follow. And if cooler minds don't prevail, it is going to turn into a larger regional war, bare minimum a new Cold War that'll bankrupt us further, and let the globalists create a new Marshall Plan that the usual suspects, George Soros, is calling for. When they bankrupt Europe further, they'll blame it on the Russia conflict and cutting off Russian gas, and then get a huge multi-trillion-dollar banker bailout, which they're already calling for. It's so predictable, to fund their whole operation. A few months ago, 4 months ago, the Ukrainians voted across the board in real elections. They already had a corrupt government. Most governments are. Russian-backed government, but it was elected, to not join the EU, to be gobbled up. All hell broke loose when they wouldn't go into the EU dictatorship, to be sucked dry, sanguinated, like a giant spider sucking a moth dry. And when they wouldn't do that, or I liken the EU to Under the Skin, a movie I saw last night, really freaked me out. And with Scarlett Johansson, because I just kept thinking, this is the New World Order. This is what they do to our souls. One of the most powerful science fiction horror movies I've ever seen. A Stanley Kubrick-level genius. That's all I got to say. I will not see it twice, like The Road. It's as powerful as The Road, and I cannot see it again. Haunting is what I would call it. And I just kept thinking, New World Order, New World Order. This is the spirit of the New World Order, using sexy women to sell their tyranny, using sexy culture to sell their evil, when you're literally walking into a black lake of soul-sucking, interdimensional Satanism. Whoever wrote this, in fact, I haven't looked it up who wrote it yet, definitely, like, whoever came up with Sauron and the new Lord of the Rings is dialed into some stuff. That's all I'm going to say. These people have seen, okay? Now, the point is that now they've overthrown it. They've lied and said there's giant troop movements that weren't happening, shown fake stuff from 2 years ago of Russian jets on the tarmac, done all this provocation, grabbed 93% of the country, and then claimed the Russians are the ones invading the nation, when all they're doing is securing their assets, not romanticizing the Russians. And now they're caught again at the New York Times. This is Kurt Nemo's article. New York Times issues back page retraction on Russian troops in Ukraine photos. I mean, the headline should be, and Kurt does a great job, the headline should be, New York Times caught creating fake war propaganda in Ukraine, just like Iraq. I mean, there's no end. Now, here's why Paul Watson joins us on this front, but also multiple cities. How do you pronounce this? Slavyansk has had armored vehicles, tanks, and troops. It's a pro-Russian, mainly Russian area, slam into the town, blowing up buildings. We got B-roll of that. This is going into a major civil war. The Russian Foreign Minister, Lavrov, said yesterday that Russians, if this kind of stuff happens, will respond just like South Ossetia and Abkhazia and Georgia in 2008. We take you now to London with Paul Watson to give us his take on this. This is really deteriorating fast. We'll see the Russians start pouring in probably. It'll end up with a divided Ukraine, the Russians with the East, NATO with the West, bare minimum. Or if NATO decides to fight the Russians, World War III. Or is it higher level stage with Putin, like Hitler and Stalin, to divide Poland, fast forward, divide Ukraine? What's your gut and intel tell you, Watson?
Well, Alex, I mean, I predicted weeks and months ago that it would end up in this sectarian civil war, and that's exactly what's unfolding.
Because that was the Brzezinski plan.
Yeah, but what's amazing is not only are they allowing that to happen, but they're actually escalating it by engaging in these hoaxes. We've seen two giant monumental fabrications in the past 2 weeks, launched basically by the post-coup Kiev government backed by the Obama administration. Of course, last week we saw this fake letter handed out to Jews in Donetsk, telling them that they had to register, they had to hand in their passports and, quote, make a confession of faith. That was splashed across the mainstream media liberally. Of course, they were using it to imply that the pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine are Nazis who want to round up Jews and put them in camps.
When it's actually the other way around, just like with the Bundy thing, they're now supposedly racist because they don't want to abort blacks.
Yeah, it's exactly the other way around. The right sector fascist neo-Nazis were put into power. They got 3 top government positions immediately after the Kiev coup, which itself, as you mentioned before, was backed by billions and billions of dollars of U.S. aid. The State Department, Pierre Audemars, working with the NGOs to fund that uprising in the first place, which led to neo-Nazis gaining power. So they put the neo-Nazis into power, they armed them, and then they accused Russia of doing exactly what they've done. So after that came out as a hoax, the local rabbi in Donetsk said, this is complete fabrication. The individual who supposedly signed the letter came out and said, I never signed this letter. They made it up. It was a complete fabrication to demonize the pro-Russian forces, when every time you look at them, they've got swastikas crossed out. They've got anti-fascist signs, regalia, and it's the neo-Nazi right sector that literally wear the Waffen-SS armbands who are marching around in Ukraine with guns and weapons. So we had that complete hoax. The mainstream media kept reporting it for days after it was already a proven hoax. Then they had to retract. Now we've had this one over the past few days. The post-Kiev government produced this dossier of evidence claiming that Russian special forces troops that were active in Georgia in 2008 were now active in eastern Ukraine. So, of course, making the claim that not only were they influencing that, but they were actually directing the anti-government protest attacks on government buildings in eastern Ukraine. So it turned out that, again, it was complete fabrication. The Obama administration took the evidence, presented it, then the New York Times regurgitated it. Basically, they present photos of so-called Russian special forces in Georgia and then in eastern Ukraine 6 years later. The Russian special forces soldier that is pictured is a completely different guy to the one that was in Georgia back in 2008. Then they present another individual with a full balaclava face mask on and say, look, this is the same guy who was in Georgia as was in Crimea recently, a Russian special forces soldier. You couldn't tell it was the same guy. His face was completely covered. Nobody could even tell. They later had to backtrack on it after the BBC did an analysis and basically were honest for a change and said there's no evidence that these are the same guys. Yet this was presented as bombshell evidence by both Kiev and the Obama administration and then dutifully regurgitated by the New York Times. Turns out it's a hoax. Of course, the original report was on page A1. The retraction is on page 9. So again, they bury it deep down into the newspaper. But again, it shows you they're so desperate to escalate, even though it threatens literally World War III, that they're now engaging in blatant fabrications to do so.
Well, most wars get started that way. About a week ago, I was on the street downtown, and some guy goes, man, why are you supporting the Russians in Ukraine? And I go, are you Ukrainian? He goes, no, I'm Polish. And I said, I'm not supporting the Russians. I just don't want a war. I don't have a dog in the fight. And he goes, well, just so you know, the Russians are going to purge the Jews, the letter. And I went, no, that's been admitted to be fake. And he goes, you conspiracy theorist. Going back to Paul Watson. Paul, it's like we're sitting here on the eve of destruction, just calmly watching the globalists that run our country try to overthrow Syria with al-Qaeda, trying to start a war with Russia. You got Lavrov saying if you continue to attack Russian-held areas, we're going to attack you and respond like Georgia. And then today, for those that don't know, Kiev military op, Ukrainian army tanks smash into Russian-held towns. And we've got some of the B-roll that we can show folks up on Infowars.com. We do have that B-roll on our video list as well, of burning buildings, smoking cars, rocket attacks, you name it. And we'll roll some of that while Paul Watson is talking. Paul, why do you think the globalists that run the West are this crazed? Because in their everyday lives, they're very craven, very cowardly criminals. But when it comes to the world destruction, they seem to be very bold. Do you think there's some type of backroom deal with Pooty Poot that he'll get part of Ukraine and they'll get the other part? Because I don't really see that, though in the past those type of deals are done.
I haven't seen any evidence to that effect, Alex. Obviously, they've adopted a new tactic of provocateuring these faux colour revolutions around the world, and some of them get out of hand, as this one has, obviously. Now, as you mentioned, in Slavyansk, they've got Ukrainian tanks rolling in. They've shot dead 5 anti-government protesters. And again, you know, anti-government protesters in Kiev, when they're storming buildings, that's a good thing. When it happens for the pro-Russian side, it's a bad thing. You know, when they've got fighter jets rolling in, armored vehicles, artillery. If Assad does that in Syria, that's a bad thing. But if the new post-coup Washington-approved Kiev government does it, it's a good thing. So we're not pro-Russia, we're anti-hypocrisy. And I'm sick of hearing this Russian propaganda thing every time you turn on CNN. Russian propaganda, as if they couldn't entertain for a second the notion that there's NATO propaganda, there's EU propaganda, there's Washington propaganda. It's just the level of intelligence that they afford to their viewers is so minimal, it's a complete insult.
And we're showing what looks like Russian helicopters that the Ukrainians have. I don't know if those are Heinz or Floggers or whatever. There's a bunch of them. But the point is that those look like Heinz coming in. Yeah, those are Ukrainian. That I guess they got from the Russians previously, I guess, for war with the Russians. I mean, this is not a good situation, Paul. But I guess what really matters is the missing Malaysian airplane, right? Or did you hear about the latest with Lady Gaga? She thinks her uterus is possessed.
That's the top story. That's what we should all be talking about, Alex.
Miley Cyrus has been swinging around on a wrecking ball. Did you hear about Jay-Z? He had his pants hanging down around his ankles. Stay there, Watson. Next hour coming up. Stay with us. We're going to take your calls, ton of news, bunch of special reports. Stay with us. All right, folks, Paul Watson is with us, recapping the Ukraine situation. I'm going to come back, get into a bunch of news we haven't hit yet, and go to your phone calls, as I said. I have told you this from the beginning because it's publicly known fact. It's just I would say it and people would laugh at me. In fact, I was rereading a hit piece they did on me. Was it Psychology Today or was it the New York Times I ran across last night? And they were making jokes, it was like 4 or 5 years ago, that Alex Jones thinks the internet is run by DARPA and the CIA. And he also thinks the sky's blue at high noon. And he also thinks Tweety birds tweet. And he also thinks fish swim in the ocean. And he also thinks plants need carbon dioxide. When everyone knows you need to pay Al Gore for that. Putin, the internet is a CIA project. Russia needs greater control. I mean, there's just so much truth keeps coming out of Putin. And you know why? I'm not saying Putin's perfect. He certainly has problems. He knows everybody already knows everything. Why lie about everything? That's another big question. Paul, why do you think the Western media, the controlled press, has turned up the lies in the face of their lies being exposed? Are they trying to just acclimate us in a learned helplessness with a solid array of lies to set the precedent with titration dose, with social inoculation, to where we just accept lies as the new ether in which we exist?
I think it's more simple than that. I think it's simply because they know they can get away with it. I mean, for example, look at the Turkish situation a few weeks ago. It came out admittedly that they were planning a false flag attack against their own target, the territory that they occupy in Syria. And that's the reason why they banned YouTube. Now, the mass of the Western mainstream media reported that Turkey had banned YouTube, but only one of them, from what I saw, which was USA Today, actually told us why they had banned YouTube, because this false flag revelation, top military officials, political officials planning that false flag attack, was contained in the YouTube video. That's why the Turkish government banned YouTube. But because the mainstream media doesn't report the key aspect of a story, most people remain completely bewildered about the geopolitical situation as regards Turkey and Syria. So they know that most of the people watching don't have any kind of depth of knowledge about any of these subjects whatsoever. So when they do get caught lying, they simply don't care. They simply go on. I mean, what happened to the leaked audio tape about the fact that it was Ukraine that was behind the snipers in Kiev killing protesters? Again, the Victoria Nuland tape where they were plotting who to install in the puppet government. Both came out in the media, both disappeared within days when they should have been major scandals for weeks. So, again, it's this power that they have when they act in unison. Individually, the media is declining, they're losing their audience. but they all act in unison. They get behind major talking points, and that's how they're able to hold their influence over the public discourse.
Paul, what's your gut? I want to come back and spend a few more minutes with you on this. I want you to think about this now. Because we get this type of societal fatigue with all this corruption and evil. And the establishment does too. They get kind of a blind spot when they're insulated from repercussions. And that's how you get World War I, World War II. That's how you get the big European wars between Napoleon and the UK, the Brits at the time. And not just me, all these mainline historians, as you know, when I say all, they're just all over the news, are saying, looks like a world war, looks like what you see before a global meltdown, the economy, the derivatives, the debts, the social corruption. Prepare for fireworks. And it won't just be with war. It'll be with superbugs are now peaking and societal collapse and debt and civil wars and just Arab Springs, American Springs, all sorts of hell breaking loose. We'll be right back. I want to see where Paul thinks this is going, A, and B, how do we stop this war? Sloviansk has Russian Hind helicopters controlled by the Western-controlled Ukrainian government flying over it. Tanks and armored vehicles and troops have come into the city. There's smoke and reported dead. Explosions are still going off as they take over the government buildings of the predominantly ethnic Russian city. And we had Lavrov, we'll cue that up from yesterday and play that in a minute, the foreign minister saying that if Russian ethnic areas are attacked, Russia will respond, quote, just like they did in Georgia, in South Ossetia, and Abkhazia. We're going to cue that clip up from yesterday where he put it out in English to warn people. This is a very serious situation. In fact, before we get Watson's take, reporting from London on where he thinks this is all going and can a wider war be stopped, which, again, the globalists want to use as a pretext to get even more banker bailout money to, quote, stabilize Europe in a new Marshall Plan. That's the George Soros project. That's his own words. Let's go to this clip of the Russian foreign minister yesterday.
If we are attacked, we would certainly respond. If our interests, legitimate interests, the interests of Russians have been attacked directly, like they were in South Ossetia, for example, I don't see any other way but to respond in full accordance with international law. Russian citizens being attacked is an attack against the Russian Federation. The only thing I would like to highlight at this stage is that the Russian troops are on the Russian territory. The requests for inspections under the so-called Vienna document of 2011 and under the Treaty of the Open Sky, they all have been granted. The inspectors visited the areas of deployment of the troops participating in the training exercises. The planes overflight the areas of exercise, and no one who participated in the inspections, including the Americans, Ukrainians, and Europeans, ever brought up any fact which would indicate that Russia was engaged in some dangerous military activity.
But, Lavrov, they did bring up photoshopped images of Russian troops attacking people, which they now admit the New York Times is fake. And they did find WMDs, New York Times, that didn't exist in Iraq. And they did make up chemical attacks launched by Assad that turned out to be al-Qaeda. That's now, the UN even admits that. That's now official, and the Turkish government admits it. And Lavrov, they did, you know, stage attacks on Jews that they blamed on Russians, when everybody knows it's the Western Ukrainians that are Nazis. Not all of them, but a large portion. And so Lavrov, I mean, you know, just shut up. Obama doesn't lie. Hillary doesn't lie. McCain doesn't lie. The CIA director doesn't lie. Obamacare is free. Pigs fly. Now, getting serious here, Russia could attack any minute, rolling in with heavy armor. That's what they're saying they'll do. The question is, do they count this city that's mainly Russian that was moving to vote to be part of Russia? So even if Russia doesn't want that, the eastern part of Ukraine, even the girl from Fifth Element, Mila Jovovich, I pronounced her name wrong, but she's certainly a beautiful lady. I'm a big fan for a long time. Fifth Element, you name it. I've seen her music, by the way. Kevin Booth went and shot some video for a production of hers. I saw her sing once. That was really nice. Side issue. The point is she's a Western of ours, and she considers herself Ukrainian, but thinks wrong is what's happening to the Russians and sends out Watson's articles. That whole eastern area is going to want to go. She's really a fan of Watson, actually. The point is, that whole thing, I'm jealous, Watson, I'm sorry. That whole thing is going to go very, very badly. And they're going to want to go with the Russians. They're not going to want to be under the Kiev, ultra-right-wing, so right-wing, there's National Socialist on record. They're being persecuted. They're being killed. They're being beaten up. They're being shot. And so they're going to respond. It's going to cause a civil war. The West is going to say it's Russia doing it when it's natural ethnic religious lines, the West being mainly Catholic, the East being mainly Orthodox. What does your gut tell you is going to happen? A, B, is there a way to stop this in your view, Watson?
Well, first off, I remember the referendum in Crimea. 77% voted in favour of becoming part of the Russian Federation. According to the EU, that was an illegitimate vote, which is interesting because when the people of France, Holland and Ireland voted against the EU Lisbon Treaty, the EU simply kept having more referendums until they got the answer they wanted. So not exactly the authority in denouncing votes as illegitimate when they do it as a habit. But what's the danger to me is that neocons like Anne-Marie Slaughter, CFR State Department, are now calling for the US to attack Syria as a lesson for Putin. So they're not happy with just Ukraine blowing up. Now they want to expand it even further, talking about going into Syria just to teach Putin a lesson. Where I see it going is by 2018, they're going to have these missile defense bases, these interceptors, which of course are offensive, stationed in Poland and Romania. The Obama administration initially rolled back the previous George W. Bush policy to have them in Czechoslovakia, but now they seem to be committed to this. It could go either way. So over the next 4 years, Russia has made it very clear, numerous top Russian politicians have made it very clear that they see the installation of those missile bases right on their border as a direct attack and that they will strike back with their missiles. So if they're insane, crazy enough to go ahead with that project, then we know where it's heading because Russia has assured that they will strike back. So that's the real threat in the build-up to 2018. If those bases do get the go-ahead, they're kind of wavering at the moment. But that's the flashpoint. That's a big flashpoint where Russia has said they will not tolerate it. So we're going to know by then if it explodes into a much bigger conflict.
How do we stop it?
I think there's hope in the fact that last August, September, we stopped an attack on Syria, which seemed imminent because the information we got was that there were a lot of dissenting voices within the US military. So we stopped it then. Again, they normally ignore massive public relations campaigns, the popular approval of things. But if we've got people inside the US military that are now starting to wake up to how this imperial American adventure is in fact harming America's interests, then I think we can be very hopeful that cooler heads will prevail, especially if we get someone in 2016 that at least rolls some of this back to a certain extent.
For me, it's very clear what the establishment's doing. They think we're morally bankrupt. They think we don't know what planet we're on. And for about 50% of the public, that's true. Americans are very isolated. Most of them obviously don't have passports. It's sad to see how ignorant our country's become, but maybe 20, 30% are very informed, very upset from the numbers I've seen and what I see on the street and know what's happening and know it's wrong. And it doesn't matter if they have the majority of people not knowing their butt from a hole in the ground or not be able to find their rear end with both hands, because a large portion of us and the people that work and are smart and run this country, that actually do the work and live in the real world and have street smarts, we understand what's happening. I mean, we're not as immoral as they think we are. The military knows that we were giving Syria to al-Qaeda and said no. The police are waking up that I talked to. In fact, I criticize police as we see bad examples of them, on YouTube and everywhere. But most police I run into are absolutely informed and very freaked out, and they should be. Because they're going to be asked to carry out all this evil. Man, I wouldn't want to be a cop right now, I got to tell you. Sitting on top of a stack of dynamite, literally. We've got to ask ourselves, do we really want to go over the edge and become North Korea writ large? But the establishment, I think, is miscalculating. And I think there's something wrong with them. That they think they can just start some big war so that the EU that's about to collapse can stay in place. I mean, that's what this is really about. The EU is collapsing, led by ourselves, Nigel Farage and others. Liberty is spreading all over the world, and they want to have a war to cover for Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan. And it's not going to work because everybody's going to know why we're poor. Everybody's going to know why we're in wars. People don't want war with the Russians. People don't want war with the Syrians. The Russians and Syrians haven't done anything. People go, why are you for the Syrians? Why are you for... I've never been to Syria. Don't have one drop of Syrian blood. Never been to Russia. Don't have any Russian blood. But I don't like to attack people for no reason. I don't like to see Photoshop New York Times photos. I'm sick of it being done in my name, Paul.
I think what's interesting in the immediate term, Alex, is there was a good video on this the other day from the Casey Research Group. The U.S. military are being trained that there will be domestic unrest in the United States over the next 2 years. The housing figures that have come out recently show an exact mirror to what they were in 2007. So the U.S. military are being trained that there's going to be, in all probability, another economic collapse bigger than the last one. And that's what they're getting geared up for, which is why now they're trying to characterize any dissent against the federal government as domestic terrorism, because they're the people. They need to demonize those people in order to train the U.S. military to fire upon them. But, you know, every piece of evidence we've seen is that most of them will be unwilling to do that. We had the 29 Palms survey many years ago, which said that. So that's the immediate concern, is domestic unrest. We've seen it across Europe since 2010. We've seen it in the Arab world. There's a huge anti-establishment fervor sweeping the globe, and the establishment needs to hijack that and route it into their agenda to head it off. But it seems that they're increasingly unable to do so.
That's right, and it's important to say, if we had bad civil unrest that wasn't legitimate and that was like French Revolution, the military would want to put it down. The issue is the globalists created the crisis to create the civil unrest to bring in martial law, so we can't allow that. We cannot allow the military to occupy. Thank you so much, Paul Watson.
Thanks, Alex.
Ladies and gentlemen, foreign powers went into Ukraine when they voted to not join the EU 3 months ago, overthrew it, blew up police stations, burned vehicles, and now the West and the CIA, that works for the globalists, not America. CIA basically sets the policy for the media, all the anti-gun, anti-family stuff, that's admittedly them. The ugly, degenerate art programs, that's been declassified, that's them. They are basically launching offensives in different cities of eastern Ukraine, and Vladimir Putin has warned of consequences. Slavyansk is the main city right now where the offensive is taking place, Slavyansk. Putin warns of consequences as Ukraine steps up offensive. President Vladimir Putin warned Ukraine against continuing its anti-separatist offensive against government troops as they killed 5 rebels and prompted Russia's military to begin new drills on the two nations' border. If it's true that the current regime in Kiev sent the army against citizens in its country, then this is a very serious crime against its own nation, Putin said today in St. Petersburg. It will have consequences for the people who make such decisions, including relations between our countries. We will see how the situation develops, and we'll make conclusions based on the reality on the ground. And the Ukrainians are releasing it themselves through AFP. Ukrainian special forces take up positions in the Ukrainian city of Slavyansk, and that was today on this Thursday, the 24th. We'll put that on screen for TV viewers. It's a Bloomberg article linked on the left-hand side of drudgereport.com. We also have similar videos and reports of helicopters and tanks up on Infowars.com. So Putin's saying if it's true, it is true. And, I don't know, the Russians could invade tomorrow. My gut tells me they realize that the West is going to stand their ground this time. The Soros forces are going to stand their ground. But the globalists need a big diversion. And if Russian tanks come into Ukraine, all hell is going to break loose. And if the West doesn't back down, the Russians last time rolled mobile ICBMs into Georgia and said, we have targeted NATO bases and we'll start firing in 1 hour. And then NATO announced they were pulling out. I don't know if that's going to happen here. This is just insane. And again, I told you, folks, there would be sectarian violence. There'd be Russians wanting to take over the towns and make it Russia, that the Ukrainians would then attack that, and then the Russians would come in. And I mean, it's going that direction. And I know it's important, you know, that the NSA watch everyone in America and what our surfing habits are and give that to Fortune 500. I know it's important for checkpoints to be on the highways and the TSA to change babies' diapers, literally. Check babies' diapers. There's a new video of that up on Infowars.com. But this is just madness. And we're just sleepwalking over the edge of a cliff here. And they're announcing on the news with NATO generals, I watched it yesterday, going, yeah, we're here to send a message to Russia that if they do anything, we'll militarily attack them. And we want to cut off the Russian gas as a message and make them buy U.S. gas. U.S. gas. You mean globalist gas. And by the way, people always say, you don't believe in man-made global warming because you're in Texas. I bet you're in oil. I personally don't have any oil stock or oil money. I have had family that were petroleum geologists and oil field workers and lease hounds. And, of course, most of my family's worked in oil, especially grandfathers and stuff like that. Both my grandfathers worked in oil. That was the main job in Texas. But that's why I know about oil. The only money we get from petrochemicals is some little gas wells that my dad gets a piece of. Family splits it up. And they would make more money because if they don't use oil, you use gas. And the gas industry actually lobbies against oil. So you would think I would want U.S. gas to be shipped via supertanker, gas tanker, to Europe. But that's not what any of this is about. So if I was just thinking about, a lot of people think about it as their interest. Well, gas prices are $3 per British cubic foot or whatever it is. British cubic yard, I forget the calculation. Wow, if it goes back up to, you know, $15 per MCF, I think's the term, why, then we'll get a lot of money. Go ahead, cut off the Russian gas. That's not how I think. Cut off all the oil, because then I'll get more money and global warming money. You know, it's just mindless. I don't even think, what are my interests? But the average good old boy out there, that's how they think. Or I go, hey, they're shutting down coal power plants all over the country. I don't own no coal plant. I don't care. Really, you get half your power from coal, or used to. I don't have any interest in coal. But I'm against shutting it all off. It's half the country's power. We can't compete with Mexico, China, and India, and 160-plus other third-world countries if they've got dirty coal, unlimited, nothing, and then we can't have clean coal. We're dead ducks. They're shutting off our fuel supply. Energy, energy, energy.
We're on the march.
I want prosperity.
On the
I'm going to give the number out when we come back. Go to your calls.
Alex Jones.
Bunch of news coming up.
Radio.
It's 1,000 cubic feet is how they measure natural gas. Like oils by the barrel or by the gallon. And then what most of the computers read globally is British thermal unit. I get obsessed with factoids, not getting them right. And then it's one of the few things I'm OCD about, is that once I want to know something, I want to know a quote, I want to know who said what, I want to know the year something happened. I like run around wild until I find it and get quite obnoxious here behind the scenes. But again, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Putin is saying that they're basically preparing military action in Ukraine. There are formerly Russian Hind helicopters and other attack helicopters given the Ukrainian military and tanks and armored vehicles going into different cities there in the east, and more Russian troops are now massing. But that's not what matters, ladies and gentlemen. Did you hear Michelle Obama was in Tokyo, and it was really cool? Isn't that awesome? Putin warns of consequences as Ukraine steps up offensive. Bulletproof subway restaurant, sad depiction of violence in Chicago. Jewish sinner, FBI shooter, was an FBI informant. They always are. FBI informant linked to cyber attacks abroad. It's now come out on Infowars.com that the latest cyber attacks globally were directed by the FBI. Compton mayor pushes back against unannounced surveillance using aircraft. Bundy has now responded to folks saying that he's a racist. And the Right Scoop has it, I guess, on the Peter Schiff show, Cliven Bundy, and they asked him about it. So we also have the report going up on YouTube right now. We interviewed Bundy earlier, and he was able to respond to that. George Clooney has stormed out of a Vegas dinner calling someone an a-hole for insulting Obama. You're not allowed to talk about the Lord and Savior, according to Jamie Foxx, Barack Obama. And there is a lot more we're going to be breaking down up on Infowars.com. FBI informant directed hack attacks on Iran, Syria, and Pakistan. Told you that. They always use a front person to do it. That way they can blame them later if they get caught. Hate Crime Reporting Act, a dangerous threat to free speech, says the editors over at the Boston Globe. I'm surprised mainstream media, or Boston Herald, excuse me, that's also mainstream media, would be saying that it's frankly chilling what the Democrats are pushing. New York Times issues back page retraction on Russia troops and Ukraine photos. Cop responding to burglary kills victim's dog. That's an amazing story. It's like a little bitty dog. And then they shoot it, and then the cops are laughing on the video. And the guys on the video going, "Why'd you shoot my dog? Why are you scared of a little dog?" And the cops are laughing. It's really bizarre. Just no empathy. And these cops that do bad stuff always look like little kids. Like, bad cops usually aren't even evil people. They're just like cowardly, weird little sycophant order takers who'll do whatever they're told and have no humanity. Watson mentioned this earlier, but exactly like 7 years ago, 2014 is turning out to be eerily similar to 2007. And it goes over the graphs. Oh, yeah. And then they're going to say, give us unlimited trillions again and banker bailouts again and let us take your part of your pension funds to protect them again. It's the same story over and over again. They're gearing up for that. Very important article. And then there's another one by Lou Rockwell. Bomb Syria for Ukraine's sake. Anne-Marie Slaughter demonstrates that you need not scratch a humanitarian interventionist. That's what wars are called now, as Peace Prize events. Humanitarian, why not give Hitler a Peace Prize then? Humanitarian interventionists, much to uncover a warmongering neoconservative just below the surface. And that's what they're pushing now is, let's go back into Syria while we're at it and back al-Qaeda, that for 3 and almost half years, it's like 3 years, 4 months, there's been a Western-backed destabilization, mass murder, blow up all the churches, crucify the priest, rape the women, eat the hearts. I say this stuff and it sounds like a lie. Cannibalism is just rampant by these people. Because al-Qaeda is so sickeningly evil. And then I'm bad because I'm pointing out al-Qaeda works for our criminal government. Sorry, though, it's in mainstream news now. We've normalized the truth. Yes, it was shocking many years ago to point out who al-Qaeda really worked for. Shadow networks in the government. Call it Spectre, call it Hydra, call it the New World Order, call it Davos, call it Bilderberg by its real name. Hail Hydra. And why do you call it Hydra? Because it's got a bunch of heads cut off one to grow in its place. Until you recognize the systems and the modus operandi and the culture. You know, Stephanopoulos just signed a long-term deal at ABC News. And I was thinking about how they take the former head of Newsweek and put them at the White House, and then the last head of Newsweek and put them back at Newsweek, and then Stephanopoulos leaves for the Clintons to run, work the media. And then most of the people now on CNN, ABC News, NBC, most of them, if you search their names, were top-level political hacks. I mean, it is, in essence, state-run media, but not state-run. It's Democratic state-run. And see, Republicans had shared power, played ball with the globalist, kind of been the right wing of the New World Order takeover. No. They're slated for full elimination now. And that's why if Republicans don't get religion and actually get into trying to save the country, you won't just destroy your grandchildren's future and your children's future and your future. You will literally have a one-party system run by the kleptocratic Democrats. And when they get their 30 million illegals legalized and then their families legalized, it's game over. One party ruling class. And they will rule with an iron fist. It's all over the news. They have databases of everybody. It's all over the news that they're tracking everyone in real time. Remember, just a few years ago, that didn't exist. And I was insane believing the government watches and listens to people. That was proof by the former Clinton advisor who writes for Psychology Today. I was rereading that article yesterday, and I remember the interview I did with the guy, and it was all lies. He basically took everything I said and then twisted it and implied, basically that I was nuts. Really, am I nuts? Or are we nuts for letting things get this far down the road? Amazing. Let me go back to this article I just mentioned here. Louisiana is coming out with a new system that tracks everything you do in real time to put it in databases to predict your pre-crime or to say you're suspicious. Now, under Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, Constitution, common law, Levitical law, any common sense ancient law, you don't get investigated until you've done something wrong or until they have evidence of it or until you've made statements. This is now, no, we just watch everyone. Right out of East Germany. And that headline was, Louisiana creates database of citizens who represent the rest of the state. Now, here's the new article, Hate Crime Reporting Act, a dangerous threat to free speech. Boston Herald editorial labels bill a frankly chilling proposition. And I got to say, I saw USA Today criticizing some of the stuff that's going on. I see a lot of good stuff, actually, in USA Today. Critics of the newly proposed Hate Crime Reporting Act of 2014 have slammed the bill as a dangerous threat to free speech, warning that the legislation would hand a obscure federal agency, a Southern Poverty Law Center group, basically, chilling powers to restrict the First Amendment. Introduced earlier this week by Senator Ed Markey, the Hate Crime Reporting Act of 2014, along with its companion bill in the House, H.R. 3878, would task the National Telecommunications and Information Administration with filing reports on the Internet, radio, and television content that seeks to advocate and encourage acts, violent acts, and the commission of hate crimes. Crimes of hate. Remember how they're going to have the FCC visit all media, not just radio or TV they claim they have jurisdiction over, but they're going to come here, because we're on AM and FM, and we're on broadcast systems, but we don't broadcast ourselves. So they have no jurisdiction. Well, pretty soon they're going to show up and say, it's a privilege to be on the air. We don't care if you're not broadcasting. You're going to pay us fees, and we're going to review everything you do and tell you what to cover. They're now announcing that. And that's when I say, you're not coming in my office. Get off. And that's when they call the SWAT team. And it'll be on the news. Didn't want to pay his FCC fees. Didn't want to let him in. I mean, everybody knows that the FCC commission comes in and makes sure you're not a hate criminal. And I'll be like, no, actually, they're only over AM, FM, UHF, VHF. They're not supposed to be over anything but broadcast. They have no jurisdiction over the Internet. Now they're claiming it over cable and print. This is unconstitutional, but they're doing it by claiming that if you are broadcast on Wi-Fi anywhere, that gives them jurisdiction. They'll go, shut up, freeloader. Do what they say. That's what the government does, is run your speech. Why, Dianne Feinstein decides who gets free speech as well with her new Journalism Freedom Act. It's called Freedom. It's called the Protection of Journalists Act, or whatever its name is. Look up Feinstein's Protection of Journalists law that just failed for now. They're trying to pass again. I think it's like Protection of Journalists Act or some crud, like the Patriot Act or NDAA or New Freedom or the Affordable Care Act. They say Affordable Care Act, it's the Rape You, Bankrupt You, Death Panel Act. They say Patriot Act, it's Destroy Patriotism and Freedom Act. They say New Freedom, it's Drug Your Kids, Destroy Your Family Act. There it is. Feinstein wants to limit who can be a journalist. Scroll down. I just need the name of the stinking bill. The most recent congressional threat to freedom press comes in the California Democrat Feinstein. It's the SHIELD law. But then it's got a subtext. Go to the actual bill. Click on the actual bill. And it's got some sub-thing about protecting journalism and journalistic standards. And, oh, my gosh. The point is, whatever the name is, it will then be the opposite. Now, that's a McClatchy article about it. What we want is the actual bill. And that will give you the stinking sub-headline of what SHIELD stands for, like securing blah, 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 your First Amendment or something. Again, it's like the Patriot Act, all of it. Okay, I said I'd take your phone calls. I kind of spin out of control here. But the toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. It's wide-open phones, long-time callers, first-time callers, callers that call once a year, people that disagree, people that agree, people that like, you know, cable or cookies. You're allowed to call in. The point is 800-259-9231. You're allowed to call in. I always have people go, thank you for taking my call. Thank you for calling. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being involved. We'll go to your calls in just a moment. And then right into the next hour, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stacks I haven't gotten to yet. We'll be getting to those. And more news breaking up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. There's a new report out, net neutrality turnaround as FCC plans for Fastlane, which, again, will be the end of net neutrality and that special new government-approved Internet. That's always been the plan of Internet 2. Their own statements are, quote, the Internet as you know it is dead. Democratic candidate accuses her own party of war on women. Again, it continues. 87% of online spying comes from governments. Putin calls Internet CIA project. That's just some of the news that we're going to be breaking down at PrisonPlanet.com, Infowars.com, and DrudgeReport.com that I'm looking at right now. Okay, just briefly here, this whole broadcast is listener-supported. When you support our sponsors, our local AM and FM sponsors, when you become a local sponsor, when you spread the word about the broadcast, that helps wake the country up and keep the message getting out and expanding. And you've been supporting. We're getting a lot of new affiliates. We're keeping our affiliates. We're expanding our affiliates. They're carrying us in better time slots. It's very exciting. Liberty is becoming more and more popular. We're legalizing liberty again by exercising hardcore freedom of speech and telling it like it is and shooting folks straight. So it's important to support our local sponsors, to support my sponsors like the great folks at mypatriotsupply.com/Alex to find all their great Patriot Supply products, high-quality storable food, great customer service, non-GMO organic, 866-229-0927, mypatriotsupply.com/Alex. You're crazy if you don't have storable food, folks. That's #1 priority. And then get your high-quality ProPure G2 filters at the lowest price anywhere with promo code WATER, 10% off, the widest selection, stainless steel gravity-fed systems that cut out the fluoride and the glyphosates when the leading competitors don't even come close, or I'd sell them. I'd sell all of them. It's just, there's nothing even comparable. So we just sell ProPure until you step down to like Livestraw and stuff that cuts out 99% of stuff and makes swamp water safe to drink. It's just an emergency device. Or you can take tap water at work or wherever and make it safe. The point is that when it comes to gravity-fed filters, we only carry ProPure G2 systems. And they're very inexpensive. Their systems are less than leading competitors and are better. So I'm not going to carry leading competitors because there's no absolutely just hands down, they're the best. Side-by-side comparisons. InfoWarsStore.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. And it is your purchase of the fine products at InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com that make the transmission possible. You can also call toll-free 888-253-3139. Now, we're going to break here in a moment. But first off, let's go ahead and get to one of them now. You got about a minute and 20 seconds. Sean in PA, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Alex?
I'm doing all right.
Good to hear that, man. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on a few things. Basically, I wanted to just remind everybody out there that we are living history right now. You know what I mean? I mean, with this Bundy situation, it is Lexington and Concord once again. So,
and they're going to try to use some hillbilly comment he made out of context against modern slavery of government to make it look like everybody's racist and land rights are racist and cowboy hats are racist. That's why we can't let them do that.
Of course, yes. So we have to keep that in mind and try to not, pretend like this is a different time. People try to pervert it and, make it seem like the Constitution somehow doesn't apply these days, which is totally backwards. It's always applicable. Also, I wanted to touch on an interview with the new World Bank president about 3 weeks ago on C-SPAN. Basically, these
Tell you what, I'm out of time. Tell me what they said. Tell me the date of the interview, or we can look it up, and tell me the quote that's coming up. Every time these people are on C-SPAN, they take calls, and it's the government blew up the World Trade Center. The government blew up Oklahoma City. The government works with Al-Qaeda. The World Bank's going down. I mean, almost every phone call tears them up. I want to hear what you saw straight ahead. Let's go back to your phone calls here. Sean in Pennsylvania, you're saying you saw the new World Bank president up on C-SPAN, and tell me what they were saying. Yeah, you're on air. Go ahead. Okay, Sean, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. All right, let's talk to Gary in Pennsylvania. You're on the air. Go ahead, Gary.
Hi, Alex. I just want to say God bless you and God bless what your team does and everything that you've done. I mean, I'm barely 20 years old, and I shouldn't have to worry about my grandkids' future is, but about 13 families running the country, the planet, and we need to be concerned here. And I work at a major retailer, and the manager I have been personally silenced for talking about Obama, even disagreeing with CNN in the break room, whether it's Flight 370, Ukraine, Boston bombings, challenging fast flow, whatever it is, it's frowned upon, wherever you are. And, John F. Kennedy said, we dare not forget that we are the heirs of the first revolution. And then they blew his head off for everything that he's done and trying to change the future for the better, for the people, for us, for God, for everything. And it really is frightening to see this the entire planet, everybody being suppressed and just oppressed, and we all have to stand up, and we all have to.
No, I hear you, and I appreciate your call. We're in this no man's land right now where there's still a lot of freedom left in the West, but the system is trying to get rid of it as fast as they can. And they try this trick of going, we're not taking any freedom. There's nothing going on. So they can deny it's happening until they get it in place. Let's go ahead and talk to Julio in Illinois. You're on the air, listening on 1530 AM in Chicago. Go ahead. All right, we'll move on to the next person. Let's talk to Mark in Oregon. Mark, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex.
Hey.
Yeah, Alex, I was thinking, it may have been yesterday or the day before, that you and I believe one of your guests got into actually naming, in particular, the names of those who are actually on the human level running the show down here, the show of death, the Illuminati agenda implementation. I wanted to get your opinion on what you might think of it as a possible future strategy to actually maybe take a week or 5 days and kind of center on the actual individuals. Sean, your caller, just mentioned the actual 13 families, and maybe go with the exposure of the heads of those 13 families and actually name them by name, and along with that part of the expose, actually add in another part that gives all the details on their lifestyle.
Well, I mean, here's the problem. I think Fritz Springmeier's book that we sell, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, we brought it back into print, has a lot of good info in it. I don't agree that it's just 13 families or that those families inherently are bad. But, I mean, we could try to put out a report, maybe the top 50 families. If you watch a Davos, Switzerland meeting, or you get a Bilderberg list, that's the conspirators right there, at least of the Anglo-American group. I appreciate your calls. Next hour coming up, tons of news, your calls, stay with us. 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231. We are taking your phone calls, wide open phones. Anytime I say wide open phones, the callers aren't there, their phones don't work, they don't talk. When I say first-time callers or a specific group, it's perfect callers, awesome callers. And that's why I usually say first-time callers, because for whatever reason, when I don't, it's just people sitting there not saying anything. I don't know what that is, but I'm pretty much just going to say you get to call in once a year, and we have first-time callers, and that's it. Because most shows sit there and beg for calls. We can get unlimited calls. Great listeners out there. You're wonderful people. And I know folks don't like to sit on hold, but we're not really making you sit on hold today. We're going right to you. So we're going to go to Michael. We're going to go to Alec. We're going to go to Marcos and Tanner and Anthony. And I'm going to give each person about a minute to make their point, and I'm going to move to the next person. We're taking 50 phone calls this hour, or CJ gets to give me a horse pipe. Let's go ahead and talk to Michael in Texas, talking about land grabs. Go ahead.
What's up?
Hey, brother, go ahead.
I was saying I bought your lung cleanse, and it's awesome. So everyone that has bad lungs needs to buy it off InfoWars. Quit smoking, and it cleared me up. Awesome. Second thing is, I was kind of off the subject listening to the radio this morning. The farmer up in Nevada, not Bundy, but the guy you were talking about last week, well, he said on air he hates farmers and ranchers. Kind of blew my mind.
Are you talking about the county commissioner that said bring body bags?
No, the guy we were talking about last week. What's his name? He said you like the guy, but you don't believe in some of his stuff. What's his name?
You're talking about Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck?
Glenn Beck. There you go. He was on an AM show. He said on air he hates farmers and ranchers.
Oh, I don't believe that. Or he was being tongue-in-cheek, brother.
It's unreal. But another thing, the Louisiana law, why it falls. Can you explain that to me, what's happening?
They're just creating NSA-style sub-databases where everything's thrown into it, and the system says that it'll pop up and the computer will say if you're a threat to the state. So it's a new form of discrimination, to say that, oh, you're an enemy of the state. And I'm just saying a threat to the state is when the congressman is on there or the state rep saying this system will identify threats to the state, that's an authoritarian statement. It's like when the Army manual that was in 2010 that got declassified last year said we're preparing re-education centers for political dissidents. That's a Soviet term. When you say enemy of the state or you say re-education centers, this is literally out of an authoritarian handbook. To say the homeland is like out of a dystopic science fiction movie. So this is the type of bizarre garbage that we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your call. Any other points, Michael?
I'll be in Austin, and I'm going to try to come see you, brother.
Well, good luck. I appreciate that, because you know what happens? If people actually find our office, they knock, and no one ever comes to the door. I have people come here from Europe. Not going to talk to them, not going to meet you. Hell will freeze over before I talk to anybody that comes to this office. And you know why? I got work to do. And if I ever shake one person's hand, there'll be 50 pilgrims out there every day that want me to hold their baby or hear about their problem. And it's not going to happen. I feel sorry for the 7 Alex Joneses that live in Austin. Because a lot of them called me begging for help. They go, people climb fences, come breaking our houses, harass my wife, thinking I live here, I live there. A couple of the old offices we lived in have dozens of visitors a day. And let's just put it this way. You want to waste your time, and I'm not trying to be mean. I have a mission to do here. It's like I'm flying an airplane. I can't have everybody come up from the back of the plane and sit in my lap. The video is now live up at Infowars.com. And the headline is, Cliven Bundy responds to New York Times racism report. And that's the name of the video that's also up on YouTube. That's not actually the name, but we're going to change it to that. We're going to change the name to Cliven Bundy responds to New York Times racism report. I had said as the headline, Cliven Bundy responds to New York Times racism remarks. No, it's report. So that's up on Infowars.com if you want to hear what he had to say. The New York Times took him out of context. And he says he didn't mean it as racism to say would blacks be better off under slavery than under this new government system of dependence. And that's a classic thing said by black conservatives, white conservatives, you name it, that it's just a new form of slavery. We call Agenda 21 slavery every day. We call the inner city slavery, plantations, reservations, whatever you want to call them. They want to now demonize a whole land rights movement, a whole states' rights movement with the whole race deal. Remember, it's the same New York Times that got caught creating fake photoshops of Russian troops. And the headline has been changed. It is up on Infowars.com. Cliven Bundy responds to New York Times racism report. And, you know, I'm realizing right now why I'm so nervous today. And it's because of the Russia situation. The Russians have said that if there's predominantly Russian ethnic areas of eastern Ukraine, that if the Ukrainian Putsch military, the occupational government military, it is an overthrow government, Western-backed by Soros, if they come in and start attacking Russians, that the Russian government will respond. That's now happening. And Putin came out and said he warns of consequences as Ukraine steps up offensive. So that's a big deal. Now, we're going to talk to Anthony, and we're going to talk to Alec, we're going to talk to Andrew, we're going to talk to Dean, we're going to talk to Tanner, and we're going to continue with your phone calls. When you hear one person hang up, that's your chance to get on by calling 800-259-9231. And I'm going to see how many calls I can go to, interspersed with some other breaking economic news, things we're going to be covering. 800-259-9231. I've got to give Governor Rick Perry some credit. He's warning the feds to stay away. It's not a dare, it's a promise from Red River land that the feds now want to grab 90,000 acres of Texas land, including people's private property that have the deed. It's not a dare, it's a promise. Governor Rick Perry warns feds over concerns of new land grab in Texas. The Blaze reports. Perry told Fox News. At issue are thousands of acres of land on the Texas side of the Red River along the border between Texas and Oklahoma. Officials recently have raised concern that the BLM might be looking at claiming 90,000 acres of land, part of the public domain. And Rick Perry says don't try it. Let's go ahead now and talk to Anthony in Florida. Thanks for calling, sir.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, I just like to talk about the Russia situation, and I believe that those who run NATO and those who are in the State Department a lot of them are nothing but reckless and irresponsible buffoons who could care less about, you know, what happens to anyone else. And if we get in a nuclear war with Russia, it's going to be their fault.
Do you think there's any, and I'm just thinking about what you just said, it's so profound. Do you think that there's anything to the claims that maybe there's a backroom deal at the higher levels above government between globalists, that they're going to act like it's a war, but let Russia have half Ukraine, and then the West has the other half, and then they use the crisis to demand a, quote, Marshall Plan as a new banker bailout?
Yes, I do.
Oh, all right, good to hear from you, Anthony. Good points. Tanner in Tejas, you're on the air.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to report, I live in Lubbock, Texas. I want to report military helicopters, specifically Chinooks and Blackhawks, flying overhead at night. And I live in Lubbock where the old Reese Air Force Base used to be, and I can't put two and two together why they would be flying low at night. I mean, to the point where I can see the helicopter pilots.
Well, they're probably doing drills at the old base, so they have new areas to train in, which I'm all for. What I'm against is training in the middle of big cities. That's admittedly to acclimate the public for martial law. As you see in all the movies, and both fiction, nonfiction, we're being conditioned to accept all this. I would shoot video of it as night vision. You know, I mean, even the Illuminator on a cheap camera will pick them up if they're low flying, or ambient light will pick them up. And I would just put video of it online. If you see an urban warfare drill or whatever, go out, videotape it, and give your commentary. Or if you don't want to put it on YouTube, mail it to us or email it to us, and we will put it on the InfoWars Nightly News. Send it to showtips@Infowars.com. So much of what you hear on this radio show every day, so much of what you see on the Nightly News every day is coming from tips from viewers and listeners like you, Tanner. Thanks for the call. Alec in California, you're on the air.
Hi, sir. First-time caller, long-time listener. First of all, I wanted to... are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. I wanted to let you know that ever since I started listening to you, have changed my life. I mean, I was 13 when I came to this country. I was raised in the high school system thinking there is no American culture, and you turned me on to the American culture. I like to think of myself as an American because of you, sir.
You are an American.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to touch up on the Syria situation where all the Christians are being massacred and such. And it's so ironic that most of them are ethnic Armenians that fled the Armenian genocide in Turkey. Now, 99 years later, on the 99th anniversary, which is today, the April 24th, that the Ottoman Empire gave the order to go after the elite Armenians in government and public service, and they fired them on April 24th.
Well, let me bring up the Armenian genocide that our government will not condemn because they don't want to make Turkey mad. Will they kill something like almost 1 million people or something? It was some giant number, isn't it?
Oh, yes, sir.
And people have to understand, then they fled to Syria. I know enough of the history to know that. And they're now being ethnically cleansed. And even the UN had to admit this year, it was just in the news a month ago, that the #1 persecuted group is Christians, double any other group worldwide. I don't care if you're Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox. It doesn't matter what Christian you are persecuted from India to the Middle East. Across the world has it out for Christians. And I remember getting criticized pointing this out years ago. There is a war on real Christians, not megachurch, glitterbug, government agents. Most of those big megachurches are called clergy response teams on FEMA payroll, folks, especially a lot of the big ones in Austin that I'm getting ready to expose. But the whole point is, I'm going to do undercover stuff. I'm letting people know up front. I always tell the enemy I'm coming. But the whole point is that what you're saying is so important, and the people running our government are backing Al-Qaeda on record. It was in mainstream news yesterday to murder Christians all over the Middle East and attack our own troops in Iraq. It is outrageous. But then you understand, the criminal groups above our government, they want to keep the wars going. So God bless you. Appreciate your call, Alec. It is outrageous what's going on. Outrageous. And they just lined up those Armenians and just shot them. And I'm not against Turks. You know, every time you say this genocide's wrong or that genocide's wrong, well, why are you against Turks? Or why are you against, Ukrainians? Because you don't want a war in Ukraine. I'm not, folks. When the Ottoman Empire and the Turks were very vicious at that time. I don't blame the Turkish people for what happened there, but I do blame their government. So you don't have to then own that and say it's good because you're Turkish. You can say it was wrong and apologize for it, bare minimum. Let's go ahead and talk to Dean in Canada. Dean, you're on the air. Thanks for holding.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to go over the importance of words and how a lot of people are twisting words, taking one meaning and making it into a completely different meaning. The words I was going to go over is everything from, a peacekeeper is somebody goes to war, kind of like Orwellian doublespeak, where you have somebody that takes over a word, makes love hate, hate war. I mean, love to hate and peace to war and everything else, and just the importance of people understanding the actual meanings of the words.
People have to understand that words are being changed. Words are being manipulated. And now, under political correctness, they're saying, don't say bossy. Folks go, well, that sounds ridiculous to say don't be bossy. It's meant to be over the top. They're meant to tell you, hey, don't say anything. Keep your mouth shut and only repeat what we say is kosher.
Yeah, that's correct. They'll say things like, I'm informed, which means that you're just parroting what you were told.
Or it'll mean, I don't have to listen to you, I'm informed.
Exactly.
What are some other examples semantically you've noticed?
Like the Ukrainian situation with, of course, the freedom fighters and now the militants. we have the militants in there now where we used to have the freedom fighters do the exact same thing.
Exactly. And more. When the Western Ukrainian white supremacists are blowing up police stations, it's freedom fighting, exactly. And then when the Russians defend themselves, it's terrorism. You're exactly right. See, that's a great caller. I hate hanging up on him, but I said 1 minute each. Great points. We should do a whole show of examples of doublespeak. We're going to come back with Andrew, Country, others. Clean water. We have a special guest joining us right now from the Bundy Ranch in southern Nevada. The interview we did at the start of the broadcast an hour and a half ago with Cliven Bundy is now up on Infowars.com, the video and the audio. Headline, Cliven Bundy responds to New York Times racism report. Nevada cattle rancher Cliven Bundy responds to claims made by the New York Times that he is a racist. And, of course, anyone that doesn't like the government's racist now. And, of course, they're in there listening to hundreds of speeches he gave where he does the cliched statement I've heard from black leaders, white leaders, mainly conservatives, that one evil was traded out for another. Slavery and then another evil of segregation. But that at least had pressure on people, so it made them stronger. Now the nanny state, all the statistics show, is a new, more insidious form of slavery. And I asked Bundy if that's what he meant. And he said, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I say everybody's got a good soul. Everybody's welcome here. I was complaining, he said, that no one who's a, quote, ethnic minority, hardly anybody was here. People need to get out here. But I was pointing out how governments enslaved people. Now, we say that every day, and they don't run with that. But he is kind of a fossil, too. 7th generation, middle of the desert. It was the Negro Leagues was the name of it back in the 20s and 30s and 40s. And then you were supposed to say colored, then African-American. I just say black folks or white folks or just people. But this is the obsession with words, and they're using that to make a big deal out of it. But let me tell you, that's how old people talk. Really old people. My grandparents didn't talk like that, but I've known a lot of old people do. And the issue is nothing to do with the land rights or the people walking towards the guns or the feds tasering people. That's the issue. But the controlled White House-run media is going completely crazy. I see Cliven Bundy saying, they abort their young children. They put their young men in jail. So if he was for Planned Parenthood and the real racist Margaret Sanger, who wanted to kill all the blacks, 52% aborted, that would be good. Now we're joined by a fellow that's on a security detail, the Bundy Ranch, Jason Bullock, who just so happens to be an American who has more melanin in his skin than I do, who's black. And I don't know what he's going to say. We're getting him on. What is your take on this new controversy? And where do you think this is all going? And have you caught Cliven wearing any white hoods, sir?
I've never seen Mr. Bundy wear a white hood at all. I can assure you that this man is not racist. He's the nicest, most kind-hearted man that I've met. And it's an honor to be on his personal security detail. He's let me meet his family. He's let me secure his family. If he was racist, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have a black guy, in his house, on his property, 24/7. It's just the media's way of demonizing him, and they've been doing that since the beginning, like they always do.
Describe, were you there when he gave his full speech that he says they're taking out of context?
I was not there, so I can't really give any input on that. But I have heard that that was what happened. They came and got me this morning. They were like, "Yeah, they're trying to make Mr. Bundy a racist, so we need you to come speak to it."
Well, talk about Mr. Bundy, why you came out there, what you've seen while you've been there.
Well, I've actually been here back and forth for about 2 weeks, and I'm staying out here for the long haul this time. From what I've seen, what I saw was the federal government overstepping its bounds. They had rifles pointed at civilians. I was here during the standoff, and it was just all bad. It looked like martial law in the middle of the desert.
Well, bottom line, I hope that the New York Times and everybody listens to what you have to say. But in the final equation, everyone's so sick of hearing this race stuff. Don't like turning your guns in, you're racist. Don't like Obamacare, you're racist. I mean, you watch MSNBC, it's literal race-baiting broadcast. I don't think this is going to fly like they think. They want to change the subject off of the Tiananmen Square type stuff by the feds on to race and division. What's your take on that?
divide and conquer. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book. You know, and frankly, it sickens me, and that's why I'm out here. That's why I decided to come out here in the first place, because I'm sick of the powers that be stepping on the little man. Black, white, yellow, green, I don't care.
Well, exactly. Exactly. And let's be honest, racism isn't as bad as it used to be, but racial fear and division is worse than it's ever been, as Clarence Thomas said about a month ago, because of the controlled press raising the issue. The way to end it is to invite everybody and anybody who loves liberty, that's what makes us brothers, into the liberty movement. I've caught so many feds online and in person spouting racial stuff at events to create division, and we can't let them do that. Liberty is a big tent. We've got to come together. I want to spend a few more minutes with you and talk about a strategy to defeat Harry Reid. Straight ahead. Stay there. Jason Bullock. We'll come right back to you. If Republicans get back into office and then become tyrants, I will pivot over to trying to defeat the rhinos. But I am a libertarian. I am a constitutionalist. I'm pro-gun. I'm pro-life. So I've always been put in the Republican camp. And I was attacked by the left the entire time that I was criticizing the Patriot Act and George W. Bush. There isn't a war, isn't torture, isn't evil they don't like. They are the dominant party. The Republicans play the part of kind of the loyal opposition placeholder. But there's a libertarian constitutional movement to take it back. Ron Paul and myself and others started the Real Tea Party 8 years ago. Really the election before last, I guess longer. Then it got big right before Obama got elected and then after. And the media made it partisan. The Tea Party used to go out and confront Republicans and Democrats. That's what we want. That's why you have the Republican and Democratic leadership with the wagon circle, with the big Republican donors. This is no secret. It's on record. Attacking the Real Tea Party right now. You've got Karl Rove's been doing it. Because that's it for their takeover if we do this. But I'll tell you, Harry Reid is the leader of the Senate. He's the third most important person in the country when it comes to government. And he's dirty. Dirty Harry. He's got a lot of dirt on him. On campaign finance and his kids getting business deals for things he votes on. And finally, it's being asked about the Chinese deal and the land grabs. That was in the news 2 years ago when it first broke. They're trying to act like none of it's even real now. Because it's not his ranch where the main stuff goes in. They want his ranch as a set-aside and say it in the documents. We're going back to our guest here and then to your calls. But now it's finally up there. Fire Harry Reid becomes rallying cry heading into 2014 elections. Exactly what I was talking about. He's the poster child, folks. Harry Reid. That's in the Washington Times. How did he become so wealthy? Real Clear Politics talks about how he had no money when he got into Congress, and now he's filthy rich. I mean, Feinstein went in with like $1 million. Some estimates are she's worth $150 million. Lower estimates, $100 million. And then she gives business deals to her husband, who makes billions since she got in. Be pretty cool to have a wife that was a senator and gave you billions, huh? So how do they counter the fact that the establishment's in trouble? Well, you race bait. You don't like Obamacare, you're racist. Don't want to turn your guns in, you're racist. And then you can go around and get honest people to say, I think it's terrible. Blacks are in a new form of slavery. Will they be better off being back, picking cotton? That sounds like something every old hillbilly I've known would say, talking bad about how the black community's been wrecked by the new form of slavery, not endorsing it. I mean, how many black leaders do I have on that are libertarians or Christians or conservatives who say pretty much what Bundy said? I bet if we get, who's the Reverend on from New York? It'll pop in my head the minute we have one all the time. I'm having one of those moments. Or, no, not Childress. He's in Atlanta. And then I had the NAACP former leader up from up in Dallas on. He said this, basically it's very similar things, but said it's smarter, a lot smarter. Like they replace one evil with a new evil. The guy that calls Obama a long-legged Mac Daddy. He's in Harlem. We'll move on. Atla, that's what God says. And then now I'm having one of those moments. If you just go to Atla, he's right there. Atla worldwide. The point is, he would say all these same things. But I love how Childress you know, and others expose abortion, but then they don't get called racist for not wanting to abort black people. But then Pastor David Manning, yes, that's the name. But then Bundy saying they're aborting all their kids, this is terrible. Isn't slavery better than killing your kids? And they turn that into racism. So going to a black member of the militia, an American, who has the same mind as I do, the same love of liberty, so I don't look at what color he is, Jason Bullock. We got some photos of him out there with the security detail we'll put up on screen. Closing comments on what I just said. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you have to say on that front, sir?
All right, first I have to say that I'm not associated with the militia. I'm an individual patriot.
Okay, well, I want to, same thing. I mean, every man until you're like 48's in the militia. So I'm in the militia. Second Amendment's the militia. So you're an individual patriot. How else would you describe yourself? I'm
an American. I was born here. I was raised here. I don't call myself African American because I've never been to Africa. So
what do you think of the statements I just made in relation? I mean, do you agree with them, disagree? You want to augment them, want to subtract from them?
Well, I agree with what you're saying, and that people have just become so used to taking things out of context and all for the sake of political correctness. And it's really, that's one of the ways they're destroying this nation, and it needs to stop. Well, that's why we're all here.
Well, they're scared of 1,000 people marching up against feds with the guns aimed at them, the feds saying we're going to shoot you, and the feds having to back down. So what do you expect? Of course it was going to be racism. And Bundy got asked questions about why aren't there any minorities here? And he said, I've invited them. I wish they were here. And then he went into a whole spiel about the new slavery. Do you want to apologize for being racist against black people because you don't want to abort them all? Or do you support the liberals who aren't racist, who want to kill basically all black people?
I really can't say what side I'm on, and actually I have to go right now. I have something to do for this detail.
Okay, good. Well, I was being sarcastic, so you know. I'm saying Margaret Sanger and those folks are the real racists. How long are you going to be out there again? Another 2 weeks?
I'll be out here for at least 2 weeks.
All right. Well, listen, we appreciate you talking to us. Give us the name of your Instagram so folks can check it out.
My Instagram is Grizzle the Beast, all one word.
All right. Well, were you there during the big famous event that happened when everybody walked across the line?
Yes, I was there.
In 30 seconds, what was your take on that epic moment?
I almost shed a tear of joy.
All right. Well, listen, Mr. Bullock, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right. There he goes, folks. I guess some people are arriving. They got to go check out what's going on. Let's go back to your phone calls. Look, they're going to have a heyday with this, but this race thing is running out of gas. And remember, they had Tea Party events last year in Houston 3 times where they caught Democratic operatives from Austin dressed up as hayseeds saying racist things to make the Tea Party look bad. And it was put on the news. And then they did the same thing to Senator Paul when he had won the nomination as the Republican candidate. The Democrats dressed up and did it. Just remember, the New York Times created fake photos. In this, they're not doing that. They're taking what an old rancher. Bundy's not a fossil because he lives in the middle of nowhere and is an older man. He's a fossil because his ideas are so old-fashioned that he'll just tell you what he's really thinking. And then he'll tell you, you know, what he stands for. But it's going to be an info war. Race and religious division is what they're going to use, and they're never going to stop. And usually there's not even a grain of complaint there. It's whole cloth made up. Usually it is completely made up. With this, they've got a grain because to the condition politically correct, you know, this sounds terrible because they don't understand the position he's coming from. I've heard things like this so many times in my life, I know exactly where it's coming from. I can tell you that the vast majority of old white people, A, are guilty about things that have gone on in this country, but B, hate to see the degeneration of all the culture, the young people across the board, and bemoan what's happened to the black community in this country, who no one can deny is in a disaster zone. I mean, it's being destroyed in front of our very eyes. And so that's my final comment on that. But enough about that. I just, wanted to get that fella on. Harry Reid's long, steady massing of power and wealth. That's the big question we should be focusing on. But it's like when Clinton was giving missile secrets to China. They would say on CNN, is it racist that there's investigations of missile secrets to China? I don't know. If I tried to give missile secrets to somebody, I'd be arrested. I mean, I don't. If I gave missile secrets to Germany, would it be okay? No, it wouldn't be. I mean, that's all they've got is tribal identification, and it's how they have been able to divide this country, and I'm sick of it. All right, let's go to Andrew in California. Thanks for holding. You're on the air, Andrew.
Hey, Alex, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Good, brother. Yes, I can.
Excellent. So I wanted to say that my dad, who's in the military, high up in the Army, confirmed all the FEMA camps throughout the United States, and the fact that when there is a national emergency, FEMA takes over, not even the executive branch, he was saying.
That's in all the executive orders that are public. It's in the Emergency Centers Establishment Act, Rex 84, Garden Plot, Cable Slicer, all declassified, Civilian Inmate Labor Camp Program.
Yeah, and he's even saying that's completely just unconstitutional.
So your dad's currently in the Army or just out of it? Tell us what he says.
No, he's currently in the Army. He's about to retire this year. They're forcing him to retire.
Tell us what his rank is and specifics of what he said to you. Describe him coming in and saying, son, the FEMA camps are real, word for word.
Okay. He is a major in the U.S. Army. He was deployed in Bosnia and then Iraq twice. And I asked him about, FEMA camps, and he confirmed, yes, they have them all over the United States. But he still kind of thinks they're using them more for emergency. I don't know if he's on bar as much as, we would be. But he confirmed everything and said they will take over. He said they will take over, period. The governor can't do anything about it. They take over. That's it.
Yeah, that's the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, says that for insurrection by the states or governors or legislatures, now they're going to federalize the National Guard, seize all infrastructure and communications of anybody that doesn't play ball, and then it expanded on with Obama, and it's total high treason. But to have that takeover, they've got to collapse things and blame it on something else. So you've got to get that intel to your dad so he understands, how do you take America down from within? How do you do that? You create a chain of crises.
And the Fed chairman says, if I can make one more comment real quick, she came out and said that the United States will be out of this recession by 2016. We'll be doing well. We both know that's a lie. So they are preparing for the collapse and trying to blame it on either the Civil War, Russia, Syria, or China.
Does your dad understand that?
Maybe. He saw some pretty intense stuff in Iraq. He's kind of like, he's got PTSD.
Even if he has that, I wouldn't let it. Military needs to stop accepting that just so you get more benefits, because they're going to take all your rights away with that. I've got a lot of family that are multiple combat tours. I mean, one of them, like, no exaggeration, 30 years in the Army as a non-commissioned officer, basically as high as you can get. And I asked him, I said, how many of those were combat tours? And he said about 20 of them. 20, Africa, Mexico, Middle East, Asia, anti-terror stuff nobody's ever heard about in Dominican Republic. I mean, the stuff he told me is just incredible. And if you can call him at 2 a.m. to come change your tire, and when he's in Austin, he'll come do it. Because now he's in operations into Mexico. I shouldn't even get into it. The point is that they don't deserve to be labeled and demonized just because they've been through a lot. In fact, I've got an article on the vets here, and I'm going to have Sergeant Biggs on the nightly news tonight talking about it. Have you heard about the death panels for the military? Even CNN now admits it. You haven't heard about that?
Look at, they're demonizing the vets. They're making you guys look crazy, saying, oh, you guys just want guns and want to start riots. I'm trying to wake him up as quickly as possible. He kind of knows it's all the unconstitutional things they're doing, so he's pretty aware. I just don't know if he knows that they're targeting him and his people specifically,
Oh, and they know who's a good man and who's a bad man, or who's a good woman, who's a bad woman. And that's the thing. The globalists are not going to leave you alone, folks. We either defeat them politically or it goes to a hard war. I appreciate you calling in. You ought to get your dad like in a dark room so you can't see his face, or you ought to just go public when he gets out and talk about the FEMA camps. Now let's get into this CNN article. A fatal wait. Veterans languish and die. Welcome to British care, UK care. The same system we now have. A fatal wait. I told you, Obamacare will be VA care for all Americans, basically. Veterans languish and die on VA hospital secret list. At least 40, probably 100,000, as they always use a low number. Veterans die waiting for appointments at the Phoenix Veterans Affairs healthcare system, many of whom were placed on a secret waiting list. And they just decide if you're old or they don't think you're worth it or whatever to put you on the bioethics eugenics death panel. The secret list was part of an elaborate scheme designed by Veterans Affairs managers in Phoenix who were trying to hide 1,600 sick veterans were forced to wait for months to see a doctor, according to a recently retired VA doctor and several high-level sources. Only reason we know is because they blew the whistle, folks. They'll be called terrorists, don't worry. For 6 months, CNN has reported on the extended delays. Folks, it's worse than that, than delays. It's that they choose who to put on these lists. And it's a death panel. But they denied, but they now admit exists for you and your family. Kevin in Kentucky, you're on the air. Go ahead. Thanks for holding.
Hi, Alex.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I was just kind of wondering how we were going to convince people of all the really in-depth and deep topics you're talking about when all you have to do is look into the sky and see the persistent contrails every day, damn near it, and you can't get people to understand that that's being done on purpose.
Well, that's because they've been incrementally, and then they even admit they're geoengineering with the stuff added to jet fuel at the manufacturing point under the patents and executive orders and energy directives. And then they admit they're using lasers to manipulate the weather. And they're using radio waves, and it's in mainstream news, but the public doesn't believe it.
Exactly. And you can see them just ramping it up, just like, what's his name, David Keith admits that they will just gradually ramp it up, his words. And then there are a few different debates out on the Internet where the crowd goes irate at the end of the debates. And basically just shut him down in his controlled debates. Anyway, that was just really the main target. It kind of makes me mad to go outside and see this happening on a really pretty day, and then they just bombard you with it. It's like something out of Star Wars.
No, we're living in a science fiction movie. And then the GMO is getting into the gene pool. That's New Scientist at Harvard. And within 3 generations, 99% of the rats die and guinea pigs die. We're going into the 2nd generation right now. I mean, they are murdering us right now. And that's why they think it's so funny. But they're liberal, and they're going to stop the racist Cliven Bundy who doesn't want to abort the black people. So don't worry about that. We're going to go to Michelle, and we're going to go to Brian and Zippy and John and others on the other side of this quick break. And we have the video and the breaking article. Cliven Bundy responds to New York Times racism report, claiming he's racist. My dog looks like he has a Hitler mustache. You got a business. You didn't build that. Somebody else did that. And if you disagree, you're racist. Here are 2 articles up on Infowars.com. Decades after Clinton's failure to control media, politicians now simply attack free speech by Kit Daniels last week. Here's the new article today. Hate Crime Reporting Act, a dangerous threat to free speech. And they also call it chilling in the Boston Herald. It is. It's a secret police unit through the federal government restricting free speech if they claim it might incite somebody to do something wrong. This is the Soviet Union writ large. And I just want folks to remember that and understand that this is what we're dealing with as a society now, and that people shouldn't take free speech for granted. Infowars.com, prisonplanet.com, or that we're on YouTube or we're on Twitter or we're on Facebook. More and more censorship is happening because the globalists are going to end up going to jail if they don't shut us down. But the difference is we're just going to force their hand. We're not compromising. We're not backing off. We're going to see who wins. We're not buffaloed. We're not bluffed by you anymore. And that's why it's important to support InfoWars as a tip of the spear and to spread the word about the broadcast. We appreciate all of you. I don't want to do this in half measures and get put in prison or killed for no reason. I know we can beat them. And I don't mind getting killed or getting put in prison or set up if we end up beating them. I'm in it to win it, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm after. Because these people are so bad, so manipulative, so evil, so predatory. I went and saw the movie last night that was an incredibly good sci-fi horror. But I don't want to see it again. It was that distressing and that well done, shot in Scotland with hidden cameras with real people. I knew there was something about Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson that really freaked me out. A bunch of the movie, it turns out, was shot with high-def hidden cameras. I remember thinking some of it looked like HD, but really weird. It looked like Kubrick shot it or something. This movie really freaked me out. When the aliens, I'll just go ahead and give it away, so spoiler alert, are literally exsanguinating from a dimensional gate. Most people who watch the movie won't even get it. I could tell it was a jump gate dimension at the start of the movie, and also her putting her suit on. It's both. And I was thinking about the New World Order and hating them the whole time, about how they lure good people and use good people and suck them dry. And I literally was so upset because I realized the globalists with their technology and their singularity are an alien breakaway species of Homo sapiens sapien. And that's Ray Kurzweil's own words. Even if they weren't physically a different species, they believe they are and are building a system as if they're a new species. And many psychiatrists believe that psychopaths are actually a different species of human. And I don't like these people. I smash spiders. I don't like spiders, just the way they grab bugs and spin them up and then bite them and dissolve their juices and then suck them dry. Basically, the movie is biological androids collecting humans to feed to a spider. And again, if you see the movie, you won't get that. I know what I'm talking about movies. Like I had the guy that did Drive On in the latest movie, and he said nobody got his movie, and I'm not bragging, but he said, no, you actually got the movie. Nicholas Refn, he goes, you're the first guy to get the movie. He was like laughing and couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm not bragging, but I really get movies and archetypes and, Joseph Campbell type stuff. But, David Icke talks about it's a spider. It's a spider at the center of the web, and it's totally cold, it's totally evil, and it likes to hurt kids. In fact, if this movie was grabbing little kids, it would be about there. I'm telling you, it's really freaked me out, and I'm just telling you right now, it's evil. Whoever wrote this, I haven't even read yet who wrote it. Who wrote it? Screenplay based on Walter Campbell and Jonathan Glazer. Based on Under the Skin by Michael Faber. I want Faber on. I want him on. I bet he's a European. We're going to come into Overdrive and take your phone calls. I'm not being paid to plug Under the Skin. I mean, I had nightmares last night. We'll be right. I mean, it's the enemy, folks. It's the enemy. My allegory of Under the Skin that I was just covering, if you just joined us, to real life. I'm not saying that's real life, where the New York Times says that I think interdimensional spiders actually exist, is that I hate people that lure innocents and that deceive them and prey on them. And the fact that they enjoy doing it. I hate psychopaths that are sadists on top of it. There's some psychopaths that just don't care about people, but a lot of them really enjoy hurting innocents, and I just want to kill them. I mean, I'll be quite honest with you. I want to get in a cage with them. They get a baseball bat, I get one, and I want to show them what free humanity can do. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I don't like killing people. I don't like violence, but when it comes to them, I want to extinguish them. I want to stomp their head in. People that attack innocents, I want to kill them. And, I mean, that's really what I'm saying. That's what it comes down to. It's that simple. And people go, oh, my God. I mean, that's normal, ladies and gentlemen. That's a normal instinct. Let's go to Michael in California. Thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Hey, Alex. How you doing?
I'm all right, brother.
My question is, I found when I'm talking with people generally day to day and I'm trying to convince them about realities of the NWO or elite establishment or quote-unquote conspiracies, if I'm calm and reasoned and unemotional, it's almost like it just glazes over them, and because you're not intense, they don't even listen to you.
I was about to say, I didn't do this on purpose to break people out of their trance, but the obnoxiousness is what gets through the trance. We need to be aggressive. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and then alternatively, if I'm loud and direct and in their face, they listen, but they put up an even stronger wall of denial.
But they later wake up. I don't agree with that. Go ahead.
Okay. I guess I don't...
Okay, well tell me, what works for you? What works for you?
I haven't found anything that works, and that's what I'm afraid of, that nobody is being reached.
Well, you're in a main mind control testing base. What are you, in Los Angeles?
In California. No, San Diego. Yeah, a lot of military people, and definitely one of the main strongholds.
Yeah, of the fake conservative groups. You know what? They'll wake up later. A lot of it is they don't feel powerful. They can't even balance their checkbook, or they're wanting to just go on vacation, or they're wanting a better-looking boyfriend or girlfriend. So they hear you tell them about this stuff, and they don't think of that as their realm. They don't know that they're living in the fake TV, fake matrix, and think that's real, and think you're telling them about some dirty garage to go clean out. They don't know you're saying, come out of the matrix, see the universe, be free, energize yourself. You have no idea what's waiting for you. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Well, God bless you, brother. Good to hear from you. Brian in Missouri, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. I can really relate to what Michael is saying. And I was actually going to kind of talk about like a Christian perspective and how it's really frustrating for me to see so many fellow Christians in my church and even my family be so naive to the deception. And I'm just wondering, like, have you seen over the years, like, the church community start to wake up more? And what's it going to take for the churches to become proactive?
That's a very important question. Most big churches get faith-based initiative money the last 8 years, 10 years or so, or they've been approached by the FBI and been knighted into the clergy response team InfraGard subunit and have been told they're now secret agents under national security. Most doctors have been approached, most psychiatrists, most prominent counselors have been at least approached, and most of them haven't got into it. And then you even get money a lot of times to be part of it. And so most of your big preachers now, I mean, if a guy has 600 people at his church, they've been approached by the FBI. They got 5,000. You know, you can hear, do what the government says, it's of the Lord. Don't try to affect the world, just pray to Jesus. You know, take the chip, the Lord is here, the Lord is here. Let the state have your children. Don't go protest abortion. You know, do what's required of you. These are government entities. These are state-run churches. So that's to answer your question. And we're going into overdrive. We're coming back. You know, I have a bad habit that I look up at the phone board and don't read all the callers, and I'll look up and go, oh, somebody's calling from Monaco or Australia. I should have gone to them earlier. Well, I saw a lady that said, named Marie, wanted to give the black perspective on what Bundy said about, you know, blacks are such slaves on the new plantation. Would they be better off, you know, being on the old cotton plantations, to paraphrase him? He's responded and said that he meant that it's a new form of slavery, not against black folks. That's a big national news story right now, attacking him. We've got his answer to it, which I think is very measured and well-spoken, at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Cliven Bundy responds to the New York Times racism report. He was on earlier during the show today, and that's about to be updated to a full article with Harry Reid coming out responding. Oh, let's get off the subject of China and his son and the companies. Let's get on to racism. Reid calls for leaders to unite in condemnation of Cliven Bundy's dangerous extremism. That way, when the other senator in the state says land rights is needed, he can say, you're racist? Oh. Nevada Senator Harry Reid released the following statement today on racist comments by Cliven Bundy, reported by the New York Times. I used to live in North Las Vegas, and it's home to some of the hardest working people I've ever met. Men and women who embody the American dream by working hard every day to build a better life for themselves and their families. By contrast, Cliven Bundy has spent decades profiting off government land while refusing to pay the same fair use fees as his fellow ranchers. He had the title before it. Today, Bundy reveals himself to be a hateful racist, but by denigrating people who work hard and play by the rules while he mooches off the public land, also revealed him to be self-hypocrite. To advance his extreme hateful views, he's already called everybody terrorists, want kids to die, remember that. Bundy has endangered the lives of innocent women and children. This is not a game. It's the height of irresponsibility. You have to not just roll over to you in the communist Chinese. For any individual or entity in a position of power or influence to glorify or romanticize such a dangerous individual. And anyone who has done so should come to their senses and immediately condemn Bundy. For their part, national Republican leaders could help show the united front against this kind of hateful, dangerous extremism by publicly condemning Bundy. The bottom line, will you condemn the abortuaries killing 52% of blacks? Because that's what he talks about. No, you won't. The bottom line is that elected officials and those in positions of power and influence have a responsibility to unite behind the basic principle of Margaret Sanger, who said we must kill the black weeds. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't talk about the Democrat. The bottom line is the elected officials and those in positions of power or influence have a responsibility to stop the giant urban plantations where young people are being put into giant prisons, the largest in the world, to be injected with deadly vaccines and brain damage beyond imagination. That's why I, Harry Reid, want to apologize for being a scumbag eugenics piece of filth on a foreign payroll. I'm sorry, he didn't say that. I was saying what he really should say. The bottom line is that elected officials, not servants, and those in positions of power or influence have a responsibility to unite behind the basic race-baiting social division system where we have the moral high ground, and you have to always step and fetch everything we say or we call you racist. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading what he actually wrote. I'll try one more time. Back to Harry Reid's statement. The bottom line is that elected officials and those in positions of power. Let me do it in a Harry Reid voice. Okay, here it is. The bottom line is that elected officials and those in positions of power or influence have responsibility to unite behind the basic principles that we are a country of laws and that whatever our differences, it is unacceptable for individuals to use violence or the threat of violence to advocate their radical views, like the globalists are doing in Syria with Al-Qaeda and in Ukraine, everywhere else, and the violence of the feds aiming their guns. Shut up, hypocrite scum. It doesn't matter if Clive Bundy is a flying monkey. The point is the federal government's out of control, and we're sick of Tiananmen Square, and we're sick of you treating us like that and putting us in pens for free speech. Got it, you little piece of garbage? John in Texas, thank you for holding, sir.
My fellow salt criminal, how are you doing, pal?
I'm not doing too good right now. I just said
listen. Go ahead.
No, I apologize. Go ahead.
I'd just listen to you there, but do you know what I'd love to buy Harry Reid a beer? Because where I come from, it's a polite thing to do before you take someone outside and kick the crap out of them, is at least buy them a beer, yeah?
That does sound like a nice thing to do, Lottie.
Listen, I wanted to talk to you briefly about a couple of things. Hopefully we've got time, but Jimmy Savile, I wanted to put this Jimmy Savile guy into perspective. You know, I'm of the generation, Alec, I grew up with this guy, and he was a national treasure. And to find out what we've found out about him recently, man, it's just horrible. And I know people in this country don't know who he is, and I don't really know anyone in the American media that I could compare him to.
It'd be like if Walter Cronkite or Jimmy Carson got caught with a secret dungeon of little kids.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. I mean, I can't believe this. It's just horrible. What else did I want to tell you about? Oh, God, my mind's gone blank now. I've been sitting here waiting.
Well, I mean, you know he brought a lot of little special visitors to the royal family. He was the only one with the highest level entrance with no security checks to the royal persons. Wonder why. Does that creep you out?
Well, I worked for the royal family on several occasions. I was actually butler to Prince Charles one night. And at that particular time in my life, it was something I was quite proud of. I've since wised up. And
well, wait, I mean, if they acted nice when you knew them, I want to hear that, you know, to their credit. Maybe they didn't do stuff with Savile. That's not been proven. It's just very, very smelly. I mean, how was Prince Charles when you were around him?
It wasn't a very enjoyable experience, to be honest. I was his butler, and you don't know whether you're allowed to speak or not, and I didn't know. I couldn't see past his big ears if his wine glasses needed refilled, so it was a very uncomfortable evening.
Oh, my God. He does have some radar dish ears, man. Maybe he's part elephant.
Listen, if you'll grant me the time, I wanted to touch on another couple of things. Last time I spoke to you, actually, was down, I was at the hunger strike outside City Hall here in Austin. Remember that? Guys protesting.
Oh, yeah, I've met you. I thought your voice sounded familiar, John.
Yeah. And I got the word that you were possibly want me to do some voiceover work for you. I'd love to talk to you about that and another couple of things. No.
I've told everybody, I'm sick of every ad on the network being my voice. So I want Leanne to do an ad. Yes, I want you to come do an ad. It would be a great, having you in that great Scottish accent, talk about the InfoWar or voice. So give us your number right now. We'll give you a call, put you on the list for voiceovers. Oh, you have his number. All right, brother. We will call you and have you come to an ad. We'll see how it does. God bless you. I appreciate your call. Very interesting call. Scotland via Austin, Texas. Let's go ahead and talk to Zippy Don in Colorado, where the Hemp Fest is going on right now. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, we had that big distraction, you know, last Sunday, Easter.
How much weed did you smoke?
No, I don't smoke that.
I'm just joking.
I guess I'm racist. I was preparing for you to say that, but
it is racist.
Anyhow, I mean, I recently watched a documentary a while back. You know, this is old news. You know, the Tommy Chong, a.k.a. Tommy Chong, watched it and told other people, hey, I didn't know about this. And it happened years ago, and I even seen YouTube reports.
Yeah, no. Tommy Chong's been on the show probably 10 times, and now he was set up. And then the other guy complains at him for coming on the show. Cheech, what's his real name? Yeah, and so he doesn't come on the show. He's a listener. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess, my point is that, I mean, all four corners of the state, you know, of Colorado, there's invisible checkpoints if you have Colorado license plates.
No, that's now admitted in the news. When you go in other states, they call it probable cause to pull you over because you might have marijuana. And, man, I would get so mad, say, if Texas legalized marijuana, and then when I pulled into Oklahoma, they pulled me over. They kind of already do that in Louisiana. They sit there waiting when you come across, and it's scary because they can just kill you, bury you, and it's kind of racist if you don't let them kill you, even though they're white and you're white. They just, if you don't submit to the Billy Club in your face, it's racist. God bless you, Zippy Don. That is really bad. You know, I'm out of time here, folks, but we got enough time for maybe one or two more calls. Michael in California, you're on the air, sir.
Hey there, Alex. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing all right.
I hear you. I hear you. Maybe it's because you're racist. No, I'm kidding. Hey, I wanted to briefly cover, I don't know if you saw the pictures that the New York Times and most of the corporate established media, if that's what we got to call them now, have put out about the Russian troops in Ukraine. I mean, it's the same stuff they were doing in Iraq. I think InfoWars, you guys covered it. Basically taking photos that they did not vet out and publishing them as if Russian troops are in Ukraine. I'm getting sick of the inflammatory remarks and the things that we are doing.
Oh, no, I mean, look, the New York Times probably did the photoshopping. I mean, that's what I'm telling you, folks, is that these people are out of control. But listen, if you're against a war in Ukraine, you're racist.
Exactly.
No, they actually said that 2 weeks ago. They put out fake flyers saying all Jews must leave Russian areas when it's the Western Ukrainians that have the racist on record. So how do they counter that? We'll just say it's the Russians. Why are you supporting racists, sir? We need to nuke Russia. That will fix racism.
Right, because that's the answer to all our problems. Anyway, Alex, I just want to thank you again. And I already see it leading to the Asian side of things with the Japanese comments coming from Obama centering around the Senkaku Islands. Don't know if you saw that.
Well, if you don't support China attacking Japan, you're racist. Because the Japanese did attack the Chinese during World War II, so the Chinese think they have a right to attack them. And if you're against that, you're racist. So just learn how all this works, okay? Learn it. Do what you're told, or you're called racist.